Okay, okay, so sin doesn't have to actualize.
No, it never did have to.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, I'm just gonna ask if there's a possible world where sin
Yeah,
never actualizes.
that would be completely up to the agents, my guy.
Yeah, there's a. I mean,
Yeah,
if you look at it
yeah,
like,
It's
exactly.
very well
If agents
possible,
have
but that
libertarian
would
free
be
will, if
considered
hold on, if
unless
agents
it
have
was.
libertarian free will and they use their freedom to choose God, if that's a possible world, God could have actualized that world.
yeah,
Well,
from
that's up
like
to
an
the
ultimate
But
agents.
perspective.
that world wouldn't
Yeah,
be the
That would
exactly.
be
same.
up. That
As a
would
matter
be
of fact, that
completely up
would
to
be
the
less.
agents,
Yeah,
my
but
guy.
God
This world,
doesn't.
yeah,
God could just
more
select that world,
opportunity. God
just like
could
He
select
selects
that
this
world.
world.
That could
I
be
mean, that's up to
possible.
us.
And
You
that's
know,
very
we're
well
part of the
No,
possible.
game here.
No,
The
that's
reason
not up
why
to us. That's
that's
not up to
less,
us.
that's up to God. But the reason why that
Yeah, the
isn't,
world that He selects is up to God. So He selects the world that where actual evil obtains.
yes, but like we
But
said,
if
it is more liable and it is more meaningful to have a world like this rather than the world you're suggesting.
Okay,
Because
so the
the
world with
concept of free
no wait,
will
the
is
world
more
where agents
valuable.
have libertarian free will and they all choose God. That world is less valuable than the world where agents have libertarian free will and they
Because
don't
No,
choose
that's not
God.
true. I
Yes,
think that the
because we
world that
still
you're
have
pointing to is
the
the one that Jesus Christ
ability.
is creating.
Yes, because we still have the
I'm
ability of
talking
this
about
world
which
to
world
prevent
does the
evil.
God does which world achieves God's aims. Jack,
The
are you
one
trying
that
to
Jesus
speak?
Christ is creating.
This world
Yeah,
achieves
well,
God's aims.
I think they're going to want to deny that God can decide if the world becomes actual. They're going to want to say that
I'm sorry, can you fix your mic? I can't really hear you.
Yeah, you're low.
for 1 minute.
I can't hear. Is he
I'm
talking?
just getting at like you guys are saying you might be saying that God cannot make this selection.
He is making that selection. Jesus Christ came here to make that selection and to make it happen.
That's why Jesus himself was
Well, no,
tempted. He emptied himself.
No, I
no.
think that
Human nature.
presumably an all powerful
He's
God.
saying a world
They're,
where people never sinned, or Adam and Eve never sinned. Basically, that's
they're
what
going
he's
to want to
asking.
deny that that if God gives them the free choice between a good action and a bad action, that God gets to decide whether the world where they do the good action or the world where they do the bad action is actual, right? So I think
You said
the
what?
key point. I said they're going to want to deny that if God gives them a choice between, gives agents a choice between some good action and some bad action, that God is the one who decides which of those two worlds become actual, the one where the agent does the good thing or the bad thing, right? But see, I think the issue here is just going to be when you say it's undesirable by God's lights that the agent does a bad thing, that doesn't seem to mean anything, because if you think a desire is something that potentially rationalizes some action, and presumably there's no possible world where God acts to prevent the bad action from being taken, in which
What
case
if
it
that?
doesn't
What do you
really
call
make
Jesus Christ
sense
then?
to say that
Well,
it's undesirable by God's lights.
well, no. So his desire in creating the world, like the world that he initiates, right? It had nothing to do with whether or not the agents did evil or not, right? So him initiating the world was not influenced by that desire. His reasons for initiating the world is for there to be the potential for love to be expressed.
Yeah, I think
And
those are
Simply
in
just
conflict
desire the
personally,
existence
J
of
Rob, but I'll
love.
even.
no, no, it's not. So God, in order to have love, you have to have the potential for evils or the
Well,
lack of love or
that's
the
not
lack.
true, right? Because God, God loves, and He doesn't have the potential for evil, right?
Well,
And
no,
there's presumably love in heaven,
Oh,
right?
that's up
well,
to
Jack,
you.
well, Jack,
The
you
reason why
I
that
already,
logic is
wait,
wrong is because we
I
can see
already
in the
addressed that.
my fault.
My bad, but Jack, I addressed that earlier, and I'm talking about loving a imperfect agent, right? So God having loving relationships with imperfect agents. So imperfect agents have to have the potential to not love.
That's just not addressing the point that I just made, which is to say that if God thinks it's undesirable that they, you know, do whatever is the bad thing, right? Whether
That's not
reject
exactly
Him or
true.
sin or whatever. Um,
I just
how is
I
it
addressed
talked
that.
about this
actually
earlier that
meaningful? How is it
God
actually
has a
meaningful to
hierarchy.
say that? How is it actually meaningful to say that He desires that they not do that thing when it, in no possible world, does it rationalize an action for Him to prevent them from undertaking that action?
Well, I already addressed that too. I said
Yeah,
that
we already talked about it.
his reasons for initiating the world had nothing to do with whether or not he wanted to prevent people from doing evil. His whole reasons for creating the universe is to have love, have a loving relationship with his creation. So
You're just not tracking the objection,
Yeah,
right?
see, hold
yeah,
on. Because
So
what
look.
I see in that, I see
Oh
that
my
if God
God.
wanted a truly loving universe, then he did create it with the intention of making sure that we weren't going to choose evil. And he made it really easy. He's like, hey, just don't touch this fruit. But we fell to temptation.
Well, right now, what I'm trying to address is the issue that God thinks sin is undesirable, right? So I'm just saying, look,
yeah.
if you
Jack,
believe,
Hold on, today.
if you
Jack
believe,
did not address it because I'm
yeah. So
addressing
look,
it
look,
and it's going over
I'm
your
just going to
head.
ask you a simple question.
It's going
Right?
over
Romance,
your head,
Given,
romance.
Jack.
given, given
Romance.
that for something to be undesirable, right, in the terms of this argument, that means that in some possible world, God, I'm sorry, it's a possible world where one can act to oppose the undesirable thing, right? Which
Jack,
is to say, prevent it if one
Do it,
can,
exactly.
right? One will be moved to do so, right? All else equal. So, what world is that, and what action is rationalized?
so Jack,
Not recognizing the like simplicity of the, all of the good experience was there freely to have, and just the fruit was there that would have set everything off.
Here, this
And now
guy
that we're in
D,
the fallen state,
this
Jesus
guy
Christ has
D.
come as our faithful
Waitles. So
to
somebody in the
follow.
comments here is tracking,
so no, she's just on your side like she always is. But
but she's
listen,
understanding the objection. So, what's the answer to
no,
that question? What, what,
I'm
what,
sorry,
what
Jack. Could you
Jack,
action?
rephrase it?
Jack,
What
I'm not
Jack,
action?
understanding the
What
question.
Jack,
action does
wait,
it
hold on,
rationalize?
Jack, because I'm addressing it and you're not. It's going over your head. You're not dealing with my point. But I'll give you the analogy that I gave Treek before, right? When you
Wait,
He
hello.
like
Nah, I
Yeah,
think it's faulty. But Jack, could you just repeat the question?
here,
Because
I'll repeat it because
Yeah.
it's very. Or Jack and yeah, go ahead.
Well, the idea is, look, I'm understanding something being undesirable as meaning that.
in what context? As sin? Sin being undesirable?
So, like,
yo,
what I'm saying is
hello,
God's
Sir?
moral desires,
Yeah, we can hear you. But you're
God's moral
All right,
very
God's
low.
moral
dude,
desires, God
Hold
God's
on,
moral desires.
why y'all cutting me off like that, man?
because you
Oh,
were
Rob,
breaking up and
Rob
we just
Jack.
moved on. Just hold on. He didn't
All
ask
right,
your
no, no,
question. Just
no.
hold on.
All right, just listen real quick. I'll make it real
All
quick.
right, let's listen.
If I create a video game, right, I want to create the game to be challenging, right? I don't want to lose. It is undesirable that I lose the game, right? But my intentions on creating this game is not to make sure that I don't lose. My intentions on creating the game is to have the potential to win or to lose, even though it's undesirable to lose. So in like manner, when God is creating the world, He's not creating, even though it's undesirable that sin actualizes. He's not. His intentions on creating the world is not to prevent sin, but is to make the game challenging or to make the possibility of love.
That's
That's
why
the intention.
Elden Ring is such a great game, because you die
Is
a million times, but then
is
you become Elden Lord.
is sin undesirable to God?
Sin is
Um,
undesirable to God.
I would say that sin is not the desire of God. I don't know if I'd go
Not
all
the
these
desire.
undesirable routes.
I think
It's
he
not the
said
The whole
desire.
argument proceeds on the assumption that for a good being, right, evil is undesirable. So if sin is evil, it has to be the case that sin is undesirable to God. Otherwise, you're just talking
no,
about some concept of good and evil that's not the one that the argument is about.
yeah,
That's the point that Rob
wait to
said. He
not address
doesn't.
my
The
point.
video game creator does not want the players to die. They want them to get good and enjoy the game. So if death in a video game is sin, that's the same way. That's just the same
You're just
analogy
not
that Rob
answering the
made.
question. Is sin
Wait
Yeah,
to
just
not
answer
I
undesirable
answer
to
the
got you,
point.
Jack.
God?
Because
Yeah,
listen,
Yeah,
here, I see that
wait to
sin
not
is
address the point.
desirable in the sense that it was never meant to happen, but it is meant to exist.
Well, if it's
it's meant to
desirable, you lose
exist.
the argument.
The
Huh?
argument is just based on the idea that a good being is opposed to evil, right? And what that means is that for
A
them,
video game
evil.
creator is
Oh
opposed
my
to
God.
dying,
What that means
Jack,
is that evil is undesirable to such a being, right? So
But
in the
it's
terms of the
desirable.
argument, a good being seeks to eliminate evils where he can, right? That's what it means to be opposed to evil, right? So it's going to follow that for God, who's a perfectly good being, right, his moral desires are going to be equivalent to what he desires is going to be the good, right? And what he finds undesirable, what he desires not to obtain, is what's bad, right? Let's say all else equal. So now, question is, if you think sin is evil, right? And therefore, it's going to follow that sin is undesirable to God. What I'm saying is, if something is undesirable, that means that it potentially rationalizes an action for that agent to seek to prevent it from obtaining, right? That's what it means to think something is undesirable. And so what I'm asking is, in what world does God act on that desire, and what action does he take?
Yeah, can you have love without sin?
Wait,
Yeah,
just answer
God
that.
loves without sin, and so does the love in heaven without sin.
I don't agree with that. Of course there's sin. We're the proof of that.
Wait, God doesn't love without sin?
The reason that God doesn't love without sin is the same analogy that we gave earlier when we were talking to Trey. You weren't here. But God has this pure absolute morality of free will where, yes, he's capable of calamity and evil, which it says in Isaiah 45, verse 1 through 7. But his nature is so pure that he would not, in any circumstance, commit a evil, whereas humans have a natural free will that is not divine. So it would be impossible for a flawed human to have this perfect sense of free will that God has. So if we are to have a relationship, to have a love and choices, we would have to have the ability to sin.
Hey Joshua, do you have enough followers to join a live? Because I'd love to bring him up if he can come up, but
Which one is Joshua?
he's Flenser McFlensington.
So,
I
Jack,
would conceptualize that a little bit different than Finn. I would say
Hey,
that
Jack.
I do agree that, of course,
Oh, look who's here! Look
God,
who's here!
Long time.
I thought I'd never hear this guy again. God.
Yeah.
I
good
think
to
that,
see
of course, God is capable of evil, but he's all-knowing. And in that wisdom that is just simply being, he is all of these things. He would never
Yeah.
choose.
But God
He
loved
never
Jesus
choose
prior
other
to creation, right?
So Joshua, you shelled out the $20 to get 1,000 followers, is what you're telling me.
No, I had Tom Rabbit pay for it.
That's what he did for Matt Adams.
Yeah.
Because humans can be perfect in faithfulness, and that is the perfection that is Jesus Christ that
Well,
displays him
you
as
said
God.
God that love isn't possible unless they're imperfect humans.
yes,
We need the possibility
Okay,
of
but
terror and all
God
that.
loved Jesus prior to creation, didn't he?
yes.
Okay, so there you have an example of love sans people.
Yeah, but before Jesus became flesh, he was with God, and he was
Yeah.
God. He was the Word. So he's
Yeah,
not
but he's a separate person.
separate person, but he's not
Yeah.
human.
Yeah, but
Look,
he's
but love
one.
existing
divine
or
nature.
not prior to people. The answer you just said is yes.
Yes.
Great.
For humans to love unconditionally is impossible without sin, because we have to
Totally
have
beside the point of whether love
What's your
exists or
point?
not. You said that love couldn't exist without imperfect humans to be the objects of love. But love exists prior to... Yeah, you did.
I'm saying that evil has to be possible for true love.
So was evil possible prior to creation?
Evil is in the same way that God is, and God is good too. God is
Wait, so-
all. God is.
God is evil.
Yes, and good.
Well, then there's no... Then you're not a traditional theist.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
logical
We
problem
don't.
doesn't
We're
apply to
not.
you.
We're not addressing a view
reason
of
that-
God. This argument doesn't address a view of God where God can be both evil and good.
It's Yahweh. That's the God of the Bible.
It's fine. Look,
I would
I'm not even
disagree
sure
with
I
you.
disagree with you about
you
that,
just-
right? It's just that's just not the type of God that's targeted by the argument.
If you say Christianity, you got to understand that that's what you're talking about.
Look, if
Most
you don't think
Christians
God
are
is
going to deny
omniscient,
that God
that's
is evil.
omnibenevolent, if you don't
Not
think
all
God's
Christian will
omniscient,
tell you that God is not
omnibenevolent,
holy.
God is capable of evil, which we see in Isaiah 45, verse 1 through 7. You can look it up. And he is capable of all things,
Christ. You guys are not.
righteous and
You
clean.
guys are heretics.
yeah, this
No,
is...
look it up. Look it up.
Quoting you scripture.
I am.
So
It's in
God
Isaiah.
isn't
So you worship
the
an
greatest of
evil
all
God?
possible beings, right?
Yeah.
Because you could have
So
a
the
God
reason-
that didn't do that evil thing and he would be better.
How would he be better?
Because he
He
didn't
wouldn't
do
be
the
all
evil thing,
powerful.
dum-dum.
That means he's not all powerful then.
He wouldn't be all knowing, and he would be succumb to choose an evil thing then, because he wouldn't know what would happen.
If he's not capable of evil, then he's not all powerful.
But that's a great making property. That's a good thing, not a bad thing.
That is a bad thing, because if there's no evil, that's no concept of free will. Without okay, so if you're in a relationship,
No, free will just means
No,
acting in
listen,
accordance with your
listen.
reason and desires.
okay, absolutely not. Your reason,
Absolutely, yes. Good retort.
the reason of our desires is because we have temptation and stuff like this. This is why people can choose to go to a bar and get drunk, to partake in drugs, to
Do you
do
think they're acting out of accord
sinful.
with their
And
reason and
so
desires when they choose to go to the bar and do
the reason
drugs?
why that God is still all good and not evil is because his free will is beyond ours. And the idea that he is
You're
beyond
equivocating
his
on
free will is beyond ours is because he is also all knowing. So he could never be tempted. God himself could never fall into sin, which is the objective truth of evil. Now,
It sounds like a
the
bunch
reason
of
why
gibberish.
humans fall into sin and why we need sin for free will is because we do not have the same nature, the divine
doesn't
nature
have
of
free
free
will.
will
I
that God
gotcha.
has. You can keep talking over me. I'm just going
Yeah,
to
God
continue
doesn't have
talking.
free will, right?
So, humans do not share the same nature or free will that God has. So the only way that we can love God as he loves us is to have the option to go left or right. If you're in a relationship with someone and that person just says, "Oh, I just love you," that's not the same as building a relationship, as in talking, going out on a date, and having that person be able to have the choice to reject you and say, "No, I don't like you anymore. I'm going to choose the guy with the bigger shaboing boing." They love you for their personality and because they know you. And that is why there's a subjective difference between a human's free will and God's free
Dude,
will, and
get
why
to the
I
end.
agree. I
God
think they're the
is
same.
still good.
All right, great. Jack, did you track any of that as being relevant to the problem of evil?
No, but these guys
Okay, yeah.
take a very unorthodox view. So, not, like, they're
Yeah,
saying God can be evil. God is the
Yeah.
author of evil. All
That's
kinds of
silly.
stuff.
yeah, this is hilarious. You guys, wait, so you guys are like cool with worshiping an evil god?
He's
I
not
Apparently.
never said
evil.
evil once. I never said evil to be
Yeah,
God.
you quoted a
Now you're
scripture,
destroying it.
Isaiah something or other.
I said God is good, and that because he is all powerful, that he is capable of evil.
Is he all good?
He is all good.
He's all knowing, and so then he would never choose the thing
So
that
in what
isn't
sense
the good
is
desire
he
that we're looking
capable of
for.
evil? If there's no possible world where he chooses evil, what
I'm
does it
sorry, can
mean
you
to
repeat
say
that
that
when you
he's
talk over me? I can't hear you.
Just because he chooses evil, just because he's capable of choosing evil, does not mean he is not all good. If someone is pure of heart, they can still choose to be evil.
then they wouldn't be pure of heart.
Yes, they wouldn't be pure of heart if they chose. They still have the option.
Yeah, if you don't
Yeah,
think that,
I don't think
But that's just a
track it.
summary.
Yeah. Jack, I gotta run to Target with the kids, but
Just when
I hope
Bill
to
Brown
jump on.
arrives. Just when Bill Brown arrives. Okay. Just when Bill Brown arrives. Just when Bill Brown arrives. Okay.
Jack, have you made the point that how Trey has in his background, all Theodicies entail that some evil should occur, that the entailment of that is that if evil should occur, then it is an evil, and so all Theodicies succeed only by destroying the notion of evil?
I think he knows that.
Okay. I didn't know if that point had been made to these guys.
yeah,
I said that evil should exist, but I didn't say that it should occur.
Wait, what?
I said it's desirable for evil to exist so that we can actually have true love, but it was never the desire that it should happen.
For a greater good, and it's necessary for that greater good, therefore it ought to happen, right?
No, sir. Never that it was supposed to happen. Only that it was
Is
supposed
it
to
necessary
exist.
for the greater good?
I need you to repeat. I'm serious. Whenever you talk over me, I can't hear you.
Seeing if it's
Desires are just
necessary
like-
for the greater good.
I gotta run, guys. It was good chatting.
yeah, man.
All right, man.
Have a good one.
What did he ask?
That's whether the evil is necessary for the greater good to obtain.
Yes.
And that just means
That's
that the evil act ought to obtain. And that just contradicts the concept of evil.
No, I mean, I think that it's completely independent for it to exist versus for it to occur.
Wait, if the greatest good is the greatest good, then all acts that contribute to realizing the greatest good should be undertaken, such that those things that are required to bring about the greatest good are actually good insofar as themselves, right? Because they're a means to an end.
You're looking at this specifically in an action framework. I'm saying that from the beginning, when things were made, the concept of the
You
structure of
understand that they're
reality.
necessary. They can't be. You can't bring about the greatest good without them. You understand that, right?
I'm saying that you can't bring about the greatest good without it existing. They had to both
Okay,
exist.
so they have
then
to
what was to be
exist
taken?
to bring about the greatest good. Okay, then that means that we should bring about the greatest good, and those things are required to bring about the greatest good. So we should do those things.
No, it exists, but we never had to do it.
Wait, but okay, do you think we should bring about the greatest good?
Yes, sir.
And can we bring about the greatest good without those things?
Without doing evil, yes.
Okay, so those aren't necessary.
Yeah, actions of evil are not necessary.
Wait, so if those things are not necessary for bringing about the greatest good, then that just means God is obligated to eliminate them.
Obligated to eliminate them, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what Jesus Christ is doing. That's his conqueror.
Wait, no, he didn't succeed, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's what, him teaching the moral compass for us to not fall to temptation,
no,
to
but
choose good constantly.
There's like a number of evil actions that are permitted and actualized. And if God's aim is to not have those realized, then God would be morally obliged to impermit them. But they are carried out, right? Like namely the Holocaust. If the Holocaust isn't necessary for the greatest good, then God is obligated to impermit them, right? To eliminate them from arising. Yet they do obtain, right? So God is not doing his moral duty in allowing these evil actions to succeed.
Well, I mean, that's if you look at us as the problem, but it's not us that's the problem. It's the temptation that's there and our inability to grasp
That's irrelevant.
the problem.
Now you're just talking about reasons for why agents undertake these immoral actions. My point is that God is obliged to not allow them to obtain, independent of whether you have free will or there's facts, environmental facts that contribute to why certain agents undertake certain routes or whatever. None of that matters. The point is that those actions shouldn't be allowed to occur in the world.
I'm sorry, I agree, and then I started moving on to the thing that I think is relevant to that question.
Do you think God's all good?
I believe God is holy.
That's not what I asked. Do you think God is maximally good?
Yes.
Do you think he's all powerful?
Yes.
Okay. Well, now there's just logical tension, right? Because if God is all good and all powerful, then any logically possible world, such as stopping the Holocaust, is a possibility God can achieve. And if God's aim is to do that, given he's maximally good, and he aims to realize the best possible worlds, then that just means God is just obliged to act in permitting the Holocaust, and he had not done so.
Act in permitting the Holocaust, and he had not done so? What?
Yeah, the Holocaust obtained, right? The Holocaust is an actual historical event.
Yes.
Yeah, so God didn't do his moral duty there.
I would say that you don't understand the greater context of the story and the solution that's being brought about.
Wait, is the Holocaust necessary for a greater good?
No.
Okay, wait, so that means God doesn't have countervailing reasons to allow it.
What's a countervailing reason?
That there's no background reasons or competing reasons to have it be done, right? All things considered, it shouldn't happen. And if God realizes, given he's maximally good, and probably omniscient too, right, his cognitive faculties are able to apprehend any scenario as either good or bad, and God realizes the Holocaust, all things considered, shouldn't be obtained, and he has the power to eliminate of it, and he allowed it to obtain, and he's doing something immoral by not acting in his moral duty.
I would disagree. I'd say that the entirety of the Bible is a or a previous reason of why.
So what?
Sense.
Okay, let's just get clear. What proposition are you disagreeing with?
That there's no countervailing reason that God should have allowed the Holocaust to happen.
If there is countervailing reasons, that just seems to imply that it ought be done, the Holocaust. That's necessary for the greatest good.
That it was allowed,
considers,
not that it happened.
Sorry, what?
That it was allowed, yes, but for it to happen, no.
Wait, if it's allowed, then that just means it's permissible, right? It's morally permissible.
Yeah, no, more
look,
like
if Superman is sitting on the sideline and sees a guy with an AK enter a school, and he's a school pewer and it's a kindergarten, and the guy starts letting out rounds, Superman just sits on a bench while hearing that and seeing that, and he's faster than the speed of light and can tank a collapsing star, so he has the capacity to stop it, and he recognizes that it's like immoral, then he's actually obligated to stop it. Now, when he doesn't do so, he's actually going to be the immoral one there.
Why would he not do it?
Because he has countervailing reasons, such as he's not interested in stopping it. He'd rather just sit on the bench.
What if that wasn't the true solution to make sure that never happened again?
You're not understanding the point. If all things considered, Superman doesn't have any more moral reason to stop it then he's obligated to stop it.
That's if you look at it in a limited, this is the only thing that'll ever happen.
No, it's not limited because I just stipulated in the scenario. It's all things considered. Superman considers all the relevant facts as to why or should he act in stopping it. And he realizes he should. He has no countervailing reasons to not stop it. He has the power to stop it. And it would be a better world in which the school pewer is not realized, right? They don't obtain, offing like 20 kindergartners. And of course, Superman is going to be morally responsible for not acting. He's culpable there.
What about making sure that it never happens again?
The point is that the action was impermissible. And if he allowed it, either that means there is countervailing reasons and that it was actually, all things considered, good when he considered all the facts, or that he's not doing his moral duty. Now, if all things considered, it was for a greater good, then that just means it was necessary to bring about a better world that dude had school pewed. And if not, then that just means Superman's not doing his moral duty. Now, in the case of God, if God allows it, then that either means the same dichotomy. So now, in the case of which it is necessary for a greater good, then it's not actually evil, because if those things are necessary to succeed in bringing about the greatest possible world, then it's actually a better world in which the school pewer had acted. Right, so that just means it's a better world where the school pewer had acted. So it's not evil because it brings about the best possible world. So it's actually the morally right thing to do, to allow it. Now, if it isn't, all things considered, the best action to undertake, right, and it doesn't bring about a better possible world, all things considered, then that just means the action is impermissible. So if it's impermissible, then God is obliged to stop it. And when God isn't actually stopping it, there's logical tension with the fact that he is all good and all powerful, such that we can actually draw a contradiction in eliminating him from existence.
I just gave you a countervailing reason, then you were like, hey, let's not look at that, and I'll tell you about all this other stuff.
If there is a countervailing reason, then that just means the school pewer was a good thing, and the Holocaust was a good thing.
I would say that it was necessary.
If there's countervailing reasons, that means all things considered. That means considering all the facts, that there is more reason to allow it to happen. And if there's more reason to allow it to happen, then that means it's permissible and it should be done. Now, if it should be done, that just means it's a good thing.
Everyone would have to understand the justice of the situation, otherwise you just get Islam.
What was that responding to? Do you understand the point that if God considers all the facts, and considering all the facts God thinks it should be undertaken, then that just means that it's a good thing?
Well, I'm saying that it needs to be understood in the fullness of its context. That's why I keep saying that. How would you make sure it never happens?
But look, it is in its context, right? We're saying all things considered, considering all the contextual facts, all the relevant facts, all facts ever, right? Considering every possible fact that the action should be done.
I doubt you're considering the Bible when you say that.
Talking about God's
All things
knowledge.
considered.
If God considers all the facts, he's omniscient, he could realize all facts instantaneously. And considering all the facts, he doesn't think it would be a better world in which he stopped it. Then that just means that it's not a good thing to stop it. And that stopping it, either he's indifferent to it or it's a bad thing, right? So if it's a bad thing, then that just means it's good that he stops it.
Okay,
Now,
if I accept your ignorance and what you're in, and what I know you're not
what are you
thinking
talking about
about,
my ignorance?
I agree with you. He should stop
Wait,
it.
sorry, what do you mean by ignorance? What do you mean by ignorance?
If you're going to look at it in a
God's
simplistic
knowledge.
way, then yes, I agree with you. He should stop it, and he
Okay,
is.
this guy's just an R word. Look, do you think God is all-knowing? Okay, so if he's all-knowing, then he recognizes whether all things considered it should or shouldn't happen.
Yes, in this way, if you are saying that, even without knowing what that means.
So if all things considered, there's no reason to stop it, then how is it a bad thing?
No, there is a reason to stop it if all things are considered.
Wait, if there
Just know that you're not
if
considering
all
all
things
things.
considered, there is a reason to stop it, then why had God not acted if it's the best possible world to stop it?
I just told you I know that you're not considering all things.
Are you you're fucking stupid, Jesus. Look, the point is God realizes all facts, right? He's omniscient. He's the one who recognizes all possible relevant facts that contribute to whether or not he should allow it or impermit it, right? So if all things considered, God thinks it wouldn't be better to stop it, and God is all good, meaning he only does good actions, right? And if in allowing some bad action that he can stop, of course it would be better to stop it, right? It's very obvious that if it's a bad thing, it'll be a better world in which it's not done, right?
Amen.
And if God only does the good, then it would be good to stop it, and God's not doing it. Then he's not doing his moral duty. But now you're saying that there is actually countervailing reasons. Okay, so then that just means it's actually a better world in which it's done.
No. I was trying to get on the same page because you went from talking about the Holocaust to this.
Is it a better
all
world
things considered.
without? Is a world without the Holocaust a better world?
See, in that case, it gets more complicated. That's where you have to consider the things that you weren't conriding, but that you were giving to that example.
You're not tracking.
He considered
all
everything.
things considered. I'm
Yeah,
saying all
are
things considered. Would you say that it's a better world without the Holocaust? Or do you think God would say that?
Yes.
Okay, so if God realizes that there is no relevant facts, meaning there is no countervailing reason, there's no possible alternative reason for allowing the Holocaust, So it's all things considered a bad thing. In every possible world, the realization of the Holocaust is never a good thing. And God has the power to stop it. And is all good, which means he aims to do the best thing in a world without it. So in a world in which he stopped it would be a better world. Now there's logical tension because God isn't maximally good, given he's all powerful, because he isn't realizing the best possible world, right? He's not doing the best possible thing. He's not actualizing the good there, because it would be good in which he stopped it, right? There is no possible world in which the Holocaust obtains and there's a better world there, right? In every world in which there's a Holocaust, it's always a worst world. And a good agent wouldn't want a worse world, right? Someone who's good does the good, right? And actualizing a world where there isn't something that's bad is a good thing, right? And God has the power to do so. So he's morally obligated to do so. And he's not doing it. There's the logical tension, right? You just stipulated all things considered, there's no countervailing reasons, right? So God doesn't actually have countervailing reasons. It's just bad, all things considered. So God is obligated to stop it.
He does have countervailing reasons. What you're describing is what happened during the...
Jesus, fuck. You just said all things considered. Just said all things considered it shouldn't happen. And now you're saying there's... Okay, so let's just get clear. All things considered, should it happen or should it not happen?
It should not happen. I'm telling you, you're missing something. But monkeyboy, I see that you really thought about what you've thought about. You don't want to hear anything else.
You're just contradicting yourself. Is there countervailing reasons?
Do you want to hear the countervailing reasons?
No, I'm asking you, is there countervailing reasons?
How many times have I answered it?
But look, the thing is you make this contradiction where you say all things considered it shouldn't happen, and then God has countervailing reasons to allow it to happen, which just means that all things considered it is better. Right now, either
see it because you're not wanting to hear it.
When you say there's countervailing reasons, that's identical to saying all things considered it shouldn't happen. So what you said was all things considered it shouldn't happen, and all things considered it should happen. When you said all things considered it shouldn't happen, and God has countervailing reasons to allow it. Yes, now you just contradicted yourself.
A very narrow framework to try to talk about this.
You just contradicted yourself is the issue. What's narrow? The issue is that you made a clear contradiction.
I told you that there's a whole greater story of consideration.
Do you realize how you contradicted yourself? Yes or no?
I don't think I've contradicted myself, but I think that your way of looking at it is very confusing.
Wait, did you say, okay, let's get clear, right? Because I want you to realize how stupid you are, right? And the fact you contradict yourself. Okay, you said all things considered, it shouldn't happen, yes?
Amen.
And you said God has countervailing reasons to allow it.
Yes.
Which just means God, all things considered, has more reason to allow it.
Has more reason to allow it.
Yes, when God has countervailing reasons, that means there's alternative reasons, all things considered, that allows God to allow it to obtain.
Yeah.
So now the contradiction is that it's not true God has countervailing reasons, and it is true God has countervailing reasons. Because you said, because to have countervailing reasons just means that all things considered, there's reasons to allow it. And then you also stipulated that all things considered, it shouldn't happen. So now you're saying all things considered, it shouldn't happen, and all things considered, it should happen.
So would you say that there's two things we're talking about?
No, I would say that you're a dumbass and you contradicted yourself very clearly. And the fact you didn't track, okay, let's just get clear. This would illuminate to everyone in the chat if you're actually an R word or not. Do you see that you contradicted yourself? Yes or no?
I see that I'm talking about three different things when I give both answers.
Just say yes or no. Do you see that you contradicted yourself? Yes or no?
Yes, in this flattened way, I'm contradicting.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah, that's great. So now you realize you contradicted yourself. Okay. Okay. Now let's just get clear on your new logically consistent position. Does God have countervailing reasons, or does he not?
Yes.
Okay. So all things considered, it should happen.
It's like you're like, hey, do you realize that I'm putting this tree in front of you and you can't see anything?
Let's just get clear. So all things considered, God has reason to allow it, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now there's no evil in your view.
No, see, I can't say that. The answers I gave to you before that you say are
wait, you just said all things considered
are the ones that I give.
Wait, you just said all things considered it should happen. Now you're saying no, that there is evil, and evil is just that which shouldn't happen. But you're saying all things considered, all the possible facts it should obtain. So there's no possible world where it shouldn't, right? So how is there things that shouldn't happen if in every possible world it should happen?
I'm looking at two separate factors that are related to the exact same situation. That's why it sounds contradictory.
This guy's just lost.
You don't want to hear them. You're like, no, I want to be right.
Go ahead and give your ramble, right? That you think saves your position when it doesn't. Go ahead.
Okay. In a world where other people are, where there's beings that are allowed to have a separate will, right? God, yes, knows that the right thing to do is to stop the thing, of course. But then if there's others that are not all knowing, and they see that action and then take that action on, that's exactly what creates the Holocaust. So there's two things that
the point is that you already said right now that you realize God realizes it shouldn't happen. So if it shouldn't happen, God is obliged to stop it. Okay, that's the whole point. That's the whole issue right there. God realizes
What I
it
just
shouldn't
said.
happen, has the power to stop it, and allows it to happen, which shouldn't happen. Allowing it to happen shouldn't be done. That's the point.
Why
If an
did
action
you talk
shouldn't be
about
done,
my so-called ramblings?
yeah, because you're, yeah, it's a ramble because you just bit the bullet on the same point.
I said God knows it shouldn't happen, but that if
Okay,
he
so
did
God-
it, the
so it
other
shouldn't
wills that
happen.
are available might
Wait.
think that it's okay to or to
Wait,
unalive.
okay, so if it shouldn't happen, that means God permitting it is immoral.
So the problem is you're conflating two.
Hold on, I'm talking with Will right now.
Right, something should.
Okay, you can hold on. You can pipe down for the moment.
A moral.
Okay,
sense.
look. Okay, you can pipe down for the moment, right? Let's
And
just
there's no
have me
moral-
deconstruct
Hold on,
well.
J-Rob, he's trying to talk. He's trying to
What is
walk
wrong
well
with this guy?
through.
Look, I'm deconstructing well, and we can do the same after with you. All right. Okay, look, well. So God realizes it shouldn't happen. That means God shouldn't permit it, and God permits it. So God shouldn't permit it, and God permits it. Do you see how there's an issue there? And how
The
God's
fact you're at
clearly
play is
okay.
that
So God's not all good. Wait,
unknowing
God,
humans that
okay,
are not
God's not
all
okay.
knowing, which he wants to have a good world, right? If they see that and they don't know why he's doing it, it's going to create more of those situations, and God doesn't want them
humans'
to happen
knowledge
at
is
all.
irrelevant. We're talking about God's obligations, right? You said that it is the case. God should stop it. God doesn't stop it. That's the issue. So God's not doing what he should do, and you're saying he's all good, which just means he aims to do that. God realizes all possibly good scenarios, and then there's a good scenario that you're saying God isn't realizing, right? God's not
a robot
actualizing the
that
world in
only
which
his
it stops.
obligation runs him. He has desire.
But you're saying that God's not acting in accord with his obligations right there.
I'm not, but you're unwilling to
God
hear.
can't be all good.
Not a
If
robot
God
that
was all
just has one
good,
objective.
he would. If God was all good, for every obligation he has, he would actualize it.
and he does.
God doesn't actualize all his obligations, like you said. Therefore, God's not all good.
His obligations is to allow free will to exist.
Lord is holy.
Amen.
Yeah, J-Rob, just pipe down like I said. Do you see the issue well?
And
I don't see an issue.
Don't see the issue.
I guess maybe I can.
So,
Maybe I can.
wait,
I can
God
get clear and
is,
say
wait,
that.
okay, let's just get clear. You just said God isn't doing what he should do. And by all good, what you said is God does all the good.
Yes,
right?
you know what? You're right. You're right.
So God's not
being
doing
just.
all the good when he realizes something he should do and doesn't do it. Look, if I'm robbing and I realize I shouldn't do that and I do it, that's immoral. Now you're saying God realizes he can stop the Holocaust and it's a better world where the Holocaust is stopped. So God should stop the Holocaust and God doesn't do it.
Yes.
Just like when Superman sees a school pure enter a school and letting off rounds, Superman realizes he has the power to stop it. It's a better world in which he does stop it. He has no countervailing reasons to not stop it, and yet he just lets it be done.
Yeah. Okay. You're right.
He's culpable there.
Who's putting that obligation
You're
on God that he should stop something?
The fact you're realizing that it shouldn't happen.
You're right. You're right.
In what sense?
Okay, so now you see how the problem of evil is successful? That's the whole point.
Evil is successful. What does that mean?
The problem of evil is the idea that there's logical tension between an entity that realizes all his obligations and he doesn't. And you just said that. You said there are things like the Holocaust that shouldn't be done, and God has the power to stop it. So God is obligated to stop it, and he doesn't realize the obligation, right? He doesn't actually stop it. So he's not actually acting in accord with his obligations by doing the good thing and stopping it. Okay, so
Does
now
that defeat Christianity?
The contradiction is that there is an entity that realizes all his obligations, and there isn't an entity that realizes all his obligations. So now there's just a proof by contradiction.
No, that's just not his obligation.
That's not the God of the Bible.
That's just not his obligation.
Wait, but oh my God, this guy's just lost. Like I walked him through it. I think he's just either being genuinely dishonest, or he's just like half-witted or something.
No, I'm with you. I'm
Maybe a mixture of both.
Actually, I just know that. I mean, I know the Lord. I don't know that you know the Lord. You know.
It's like he just accepts every premise. He says the structure is valid, the inference, and then he just denies the conclusion. It's like, what more should I expect in a conversation with someone like that?
The way the argument is proposed, right, it conflates two ideas of what is morally impermissible and what is acceptable in the sense of for free will. So God allows free will to exist. Just because agents do evil with the free will, that doesn't mean that evil should be done, or all things considered, it should be done. That's a moral. That doesn't
matter. Whether or not you have free will, if this action is an action granted free will, such that free will action shouldn't be exercised, then the action's still impermissible.
Yeah, it shouldn't be exercised in the sense of it's morally.
Okay, wait, it shouldn't be exercised. So
Bro,
that
can I
means it's a better
finish?
world in which it's
Can I
not
finish?
exercised, correct?
Can I finish?
Wait,
In one,
when you
in
say
one,
it, wait, I just want to get clear. I just want to get clear on something real quick. I'll let you speak after. When you say the action shouldn't be exercised, are you saying it's a better world where the action isn't exercised?
I'm saying that is morally wrong.
Just answer my question.
You said what?
You say the action shouldn't be exercised. Are you saying it's a better world in which the action isn't exercised?
It's a better world.
We talked about this earlier with you, monkeyboy. You think permissible and action go together?
Hold on, let J-Rob answer. Hold on.
It's a better world in what sense?
Permissible just means morally allowable. But look, you said that there's actions under free will which shouldn't be exercised, correct?
You said there's in a moral sense.
Okay, so then in a world in which the action isn't exercised is a better world.
In a moral sense, yes. In a moral sense, yes. But
Yeah, so it is a better world in which the action isn't actualized, the exercise of free will.
In one sense, yes, and in another sense, no.
What is the other sense now?
Yeah, in the sense of free will, in the sense of God giving agents the ability to make choices that could be good.
Are you saying it's a wait? Are you saying it's immoral when we it's immoral when we like arrest someone's capacity to undertake free will actions?
Yes.
In every scenario?
That's slavery.
Wait, then that just means every sin action is good then. Because if it's better that you don't actually stop
that permissibility and action go together.
Look, you just is it a better world in when someone exercises their free will choice in sinning?
It's a better world when people have the ability to exercise their free will.
Okay, well, you can have the ability and then never actually actualize certain or exercise certain actions.
Yeah, that would
right?
be
It doesn't take away from your capacity.
That would be completely up to the agent.
Wait, what? No, look. The point is it a better world in which someone exercises a sin?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Or is it a worse world? Is it a worse world in which someone exercises sin?
Is it a worse world when somebody exercises sin?
Let's say there's two worlds and they're identical, except in one world, Jerry sees a store and decides not to rob it, and another he does decide to rob it. Would you say the world in which it's not robbed is better?
Yeah, it depends on the reasoning.
It is a better in which there's a world in which Jerry doesn't rob it.
It depends on the reasoning. If the world is he doesn't rob the bank because he doesn't have the ability to rob the bank, then no, that's not a better world.
Let's say he's rich. He's the richest man in the world.
Yeah, it just depends on the reasons why he doesn't rob the bank. If it's because he doesn't have the free will to do so, then that's not a better world.
Wait, let's say it's a PS5 and he's a billionaire.
Yeah,
so let's say he robs the store because all of the PS5s are out of stock, even though he has the money to buy it. Yeah, so there's one that's still on hold because someone else pre-ordered it and he decides to rob the store to take it.
Yeah, it's the same.
Is it a better world in which it's not done?
It's the same answer. Same answer.
What was the answer?
That it depends on why. If he doesn't have,
I just gave why. Now, is it a better world or a worse world?
No, I'm saying if he doesn't rob the whatever because he doesn't have the free will to do so, then that's not a better world.
Just answer my question. Is it a better world in which he robs it or doesn't?
I just told you. It just depends on why.
I gave you why. Can you just Is the world in which he robbed a better world? Yes or no?
It depends.
Bro, why are you being dishonest?
I'm not being dishonest. I'm not being dishonest.
You keep saying you said contextual. You said variant on the reasons, right? Yeah. The background reasons that concern the action being undertaken will allow you to actually adjudicate whether or not the world is better or worse. So I provided you that, and then when I asked you I react to the same binary question of whether it's a better or worse world, right? Yes or no, is it a better world? Then you said the same shit about I need to know the reasons when I've just fucking provided you that.
Yeah, so I'm saying if we're talking about apples to apples, right? We're talking about the same kind of free will that we have in this world.
Okay, I'm just going to repeat my question because I really don't want the meta. Is it yes or no? Is it a worse world in which he robs?
You want to answer all these weird hypotheticals, but you don't want to answer them back.
Yeah, look, I can answer your question once you answer mine, right? I've been asking this question for a while, right? So preliminarily, we'll have our our questions answered. And it doesn't seem that I haven't even heard a question from you, so I'm not sure what you're asking. But I'll keep bringing up problems
to your thought experiments, and then you run away from them back to your thought experiment.
Exactly.
Sorry.
That's what Jack was doing.
Hold on for a moment.
I got habits.
Hold on for a moment. Here, I'm going to need to mute you because I don't know you keep. Well, what was the problem that he raised with my scenario? that you
I
claimed
wasn't paying
that I
attention
ran
to
away
this
from.
conversation. I can't lie.
Okay, so then don't make claims about him raising issues and me running away from them when you can't actually
That's what you're
recognize
doing.
any. You can't recognize any issue I ran away from.
I can tell you what
That's
you did in our
dishonest.
conversation, and I imagine you
That's
did the same thing in
dishonest.
his.
Wait, what did I do in your conversation that included me running away from an issue?
I talked to
It
you
seems
about
more
the
like
factors
the
at
contrary.
hand contributing to the contradiction that was going on.
Well, that's the problem,
Wait,
Monkey Boy.
when you say factors at hand, that means there's other facts that are not considered. And I asked you if all things
Exactly.
considered, moron. No, but I asked you if it shouldn't happen, all things considered.
So,
And then
Monkey
you said,
Boy.
yes. Hold on, Rob. You said all things considered, it shouldn't happen.
Yes.
And then I said, okay, so there's no countervailing reasons. And then you said, yes, there is countervailing reasons, which just means all things considered, it should happen.
And I told
And
you
there was the
say
contradiction.
all things considered.
You said there's
Monkey Boy, if
additional
you don't
factors.
know what that means,
The
you're
contradiction
missing
was that there
something.
is additional factors, and there isn't. You're the one who's lost.
If you say all things considered and you don't know what that means, you're missing something.
You just
No,
said,
you
oh my
don't know
God.
what it means.
If there isn't relevant, considering all the factors, if there's factors, if considering all the factors, God considers all the factors, and considering all the factors, he allows to permit the action, that just means that all things considered, it should happen.
That's not true. I don't think that's a logical conclusion.
Wait, so is there a possible world in which he realizes all the factors, and considering all the factors, it shouldn't happen, and God has the power to stop it, and doesn't stop it, and somehow he's doing his moral obligation?
I think that there's a world where that situation isn't happening and all the things that we've said follow through.
So no evil should happen.
This guy's
in a
just
moral,
a dishonest piece of filth right now.
yeah, no evil should happen in a moral sense.
Like, there's no way even theists who aren't
everyone
like
should
this
be able-
motivated don't realize how
and
he's
it-
just like being like a disingenuous prick.
Yeah, no agents.
Dialectically, it's like very clear.
Yeah, Monkey Boy is such a sad.
It's like he
character.
wants he's like literally wanting his cake and eating it too. It's like he's biting the contradiction, and then he's also then just denying it.
Wait, J-Rob,
For
do you see
clear
how he's
other
contradicting
reason
himself?
than denying to say that there's no countervailing
See how
reasons,
Monkey
which he
Boy-
accepted.
We're
There
starting
isn't.
from a
Love
place
to
of
hear-
wrong.
Hear himself talk.
Bro, but do you see how
Do you see how he contradicted himself? Yes or no?
No, I see
Starting from a place
you
we're wrong.
loving to talk.
Okay. The issue was I asked him if all things considered should the Holocaust happen. He said all things considered it shouldn't happen. Then he said there's countervailing reasons, and by countervailing reasons, what he meant is that there's background reasons, right? Background factors, all things considered, that allow it to happen.
Yeah, that's
So now
not,
he
that's,
said.
that's not a
So now he said.
contradiction.
Oh my
Really?
God.
So wait. So a contradiction's a P in
because-
conjunction with not P.
Yeah,
And
you're
he said
conflating two-
verbatim. He said verbatim. All
So-
things
so a
considered, it should
contradiction-
happen. On all things considered, it shouldn't happen. There's no contradiction.
He's right, he's right.
Wait, J-Rob, J-Rob. Did he not say, did I not make it clear to you?
Contradiction, yeah.
Did he not just say
I
all things
heard you.
considered,
I heard
it should
you.
happen? Stop
I heard you.
unmuting,
I
or I'm
heard
gonna
you.
drop
I heard
you.
you.
No.
I heard you.
Stop over
I heard
talking.
you.
I'm just,
You said you love talking. I know. That's why you.
dude, this guy's just like unwilling to engage.
Okay, I'm on the same page with you that, okay, if we look at it pure
Yeah, you
face value,
clearly contradicted yourself. And even when I asked you, you said, yes, I realized I contradicted myself.
and
So I
so we
don't
got clear.
understand how J-Rob is saying, after making it clear, you said all things considered, not all things considered, it should happen. Like this guy, Jesus, like these people on TikTok, like J-Rob, Cypher, you, Dr. Truth, all these people are just like literally intellectual filth. There's like no reasoning with them.
You freaking love
They would
to hear yourself
accept,
talk.
they
You don't like to get refuted.
realize
Yeah.
that a contradiction
He
is a
asked me
P and not
question,
P.
And when
I don't know why you have this bad habit of over talking.
Bro, just wait, J-Rob.
The host allowed you to come back on stage after that dishonest performance. And then in the middle of me explaining how you're being dishonest, instead of offering something substantive, you just interject to say the same thing you said prior, which is not engaging with the fact both I illuminated how he said a P and not P, and he's signing off on the fact he made a P and not P. And then you're just denying he said P or not P. Like there's no more dishonesty than that. Showing how he said some proposition and the negation of that in the same respect and conjunction. The person who said that signs off on that. And then he's somehow denying that that's being said. Like, I don't see why I should bring him back on stage on the panel. But
Okay,
look,
I'm on board.
I don't know if Jack's free. I think I should just allow Jack to talk with these people, but I don't know if it's going to get much further. They're just
I'm on
clearly
board.
disingenuous.
I'm on board with you saying that there's essentially then a contradiction between like ultimate good. And I think that, yes, I think that's a good place to jump into a further conversation. Because I guess what you're describing is God's justice, where he is taking on an evil action, but for the greater good.
All right, I'm gonna let J-Rob back up because there's no one else.
Yeah, so Trick, I
Talking
was
to that
explaining how it's
science-based
not a
crap.
contradiction. I'm trying to. He asked me a question, and I'm trying to explain how it's not a contradiction
Wait,
instead of us.
but Will already affirms that
Wait,
there's a
wait,
contradiction.
because Will might not like grasp because what he's saying is not actually a contradiction. Just the way it's being worded, it sounds like a
Is
contradiction. Yeah, yeah. Can you be quiet and I can answer? Right?
he said
Because
verbatim
oh
all
my
thing
God, you see what I'm saying? You see
hold
what
up,
I'm
hold
saying?
up.
He
Wait,
loves to hear
J
himself
Rob,
talk. I know
J
what he said.
Rob.
I listened. I heard. Can you be quiet so
He
I can show you
verbatim
why it's not a
said all
I
things
heard him.
considered
Can
it
you
should
shut up,
happen,
dude?
and
Like, you see,
all
this is
things
what I'm talking about. You
considered
love
it
to hear
shouldn't.
yourself talk. You won't shut up. So,
Is that a contradiction? Yes or
like I
no?
was saying, it's not a contradiction because in order for it to be a contradiction,
Dropping him.
right, it has to be two opposing statements that.
Jack can talk well.
Well, the thing is, I think he's just, well, earlier he was just saying, oh, look who's here. Earlier he was just saying that he was adopting like some view of God where being a good being does not mean you're opposed to evil, right? And then it's just not going to be targeted by the argument. But I don't know if he's like, maybe hasn't been consistent about that.
Yeah, I think I didn't want to lose the like complexity of the issue, that I was unwilling to like just follow along with monkeyboy, which is unfair for sure. Sorry about that. But I do see now you're talking about the justice aspect.
Yeah, I mean, this argument is about if God is, if you're understanding good as something like to be a good being is to be opposed to evil, then what this argument is supposed to show is that there's going to be a contradiction if God is perfectly good and all powerful and let's say all knowing, right? And yet evil exists, right? In this sense where good and evil are like opposed. If you give up on one of those things, right? If you construe goodness in a way that's not oppositional to evil, right? Or you give up on one of the other properties of God, or you deny that evil exists, then you're not going to have this contradiction. But if you're going to do one of those things, then if you're not going to do one of those things, then the contradiction is going to be there.
Wait, you said he's not talking about good in this deontological sense?
Well, it sounded like he was saying that a good being could do evil things, is not like necessarily opposed to evil. That's what it sounded like.
What does it mean to be good?
Yeah, I don't look. Well, do you think there's any action that God could do that would consider him evil?
That would consider him evil, yes.
Such as?
If he did something like quite clearly evil. If he had created
Sitting on the sideline while having the capacity to stop the Holocaust isn't evil?
If you allowed it. Yeah, go ahead. It's fine.
Like
With me, I
allowing
won't bat an eye
17
to
million
stop it.
people to unalive while having the power to do so, and not having presumably any countervailing reasons to not stop it. Just like in the Superman scenario where you said he would be culpable for just sitting on the bench and seeing like a guy pew up a school while having the power to stop it. Somehow he's like not immoral in that scenario.
I think I need you to rein in this question. I feel like it's I'm losing the picture.
Look, if I don't see what's unclear. Do you think, I just want to get clear, in the scenario in which Superman has no reasons to not stop the school pure, right? He moves faster than the speed of light, contain collapsing stars. He's sitting on the bench and sees a guy enter the school with an AK, right? So he obviously knows what their intentions were. He could have stopped them even before he entered, and just allows him to enter and start pewing and unalive several kindergartners. Do you think Superman's doing something immoral there?
I think he's doing something neglectful.
Would you say that's immoral?
I don't know if that is necessarily immoral.
Are you
Is he
saying
morally blameworthy? I mean, come on. If a teacher
The issue-
is in a school and there's a fire in the classroom and there's a fire extinguisher there and she doesn't do anything to put it out, she's responsible. She's morally responsible for that.
What is this, Gene on TikTok?
It's Jane on TikTok. The issue, Monkey Boy, is that you worded it such that he said, "Could God be considered evil?" So he's thinking like he's not actually evil. When he answered yes, I think what he meant was someone could look at him and perceive him as evil, and that he wouldn't actually be evil. Is that what you thought? Well,
yeah. I mean, I'm just I'm trying really hard to fit into their mental framework, and this is difficult because obviously I see it.
Would you
it's
say
not
Superman
difficult.
is
You're like
evil?
purposefully. It's like you're purposely trying to avoid it.
Look, would you say Superman is evil in the scenario I described?
No, because he's not the one carrying out the action.
Oh, wait. So so you just take it for anything to be evil, the action must be immoral and carried out by the agent?
Yes, absolutely.
Then what about a hitman? You're going to say the person who hired the hitman isn't guilty?
Wait, I have a funny scenario. So if Superman, let's say he was sleepwalking, and in his sleepwalk, he just starts like destroying stuff and unaliving people because how powerful he is, and he's not actually doing this with intent. So he's not realizing that it's immoral, right? And he doesn't intend to act on these dispositions of destruction. Then he's not morally culpable because you said the agent has to recognize it's immoral and carry out the action with intent. But the agent there, would you say Superman is immoral for unaliving those people without conscious realization or intention?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say he's immoral. I'd say he's unrestrained, control.
Okay, well, that's just a reductio. That's insane.
I think that's God,
Well, I think you also want to say that Superman is opposed to this sort of thing happening, right? And so in what sense is he good and acting in accordance with his reasons and desires if he'll do nothing to prevent this scenario from happening? Just doesn't seem to track the words that we're using.
Like presumably
in a different word.
Question. I like that question. The reason that is what we were talking about earlier is that in order for there to be good to exist, it has to be possible that people can do these terrible things.
Wait, by can do you mean that
appeal to a greater good?
Sorry, which one?
Well, if you're saying that these evils are necessary for this greater good, then that's just to say that these evils are good, that they're not evil. Because if they're necessary for the greater good, then they ought to happen. And if something ought to happen, then that's what we mean by good.
And this is where I was getting with monkeyboy too. I don't believe that the evil existing and the evil happening are the same thing.
But you agree it would be a better world in which the evils aren't actualized.
Yes, but the evil should exist for a good world.
So would it be, so in God stopping the evils from obtaining, that's a better world?
No, because then that means that it wouldn't be possible, right?
But you just said it's a better world in which the evils aren't exercised.
Yes, of course, but it has to be possible in order for the good world to exist.
What do you mean by possible? What do you mean by possible?
Yeah,
like, do you mean like there's some world where it happens?
Not a world where it happened, but a world where it could happen.
Okay.
Oh my God.
What? It's like a potential actual distinction.
Yes, thank you.
No, it's gibberish.
Yeah, that's...
I feel so inconsistent for you fellas.
It's unintelligible.
Because you're saying it can't happen in any possible world.
I'm saying it can't happen?
To say it doesn't happen. Yeah, you're saying there's no possible world where it happens. Right?
That would be a good world. I mean, if it didn't happen, but it has to be possible to happen everywhere.
Right,
Yeah,
but then
God
that
just
means that there's a
prevents it.
world in which, right.
God just like prevents it from happening. Sure, it was possible if God had not prevented it. But God is this like evil prevention machine. And he's perfect at it.
I'm confused.
What are you confused about?
There's a prevention machine.
Yeah, God is this like evil prevention machine, right? He's opposed to all evil and he prevents it all from happening. It's possible if God didn't exist, but God does exist, so evil doesn't occur.
See, God is not opposed to anything. Opposition is opposed to God.
Is that not opposed to sin?
What's up, y'all?
God is. Opposition is the adversary. That's what the whole concept of like that force of nature is.
He desires not for sin to be exercised.
Absolutely.
Is God an agent?
He's opposed to sin.
You just said he doesn't
anything.
Well, you just said he's opposed
I feel
to
like
sin.
you're using different meanings of words and using them inappropriately to confuse everyone. Yourself.
I'm not trying to confuse anybody, but
You're taking this notion of like Satan being the adversary and extrapolating it to like a realm where it doesn't belong. Like we're talking about God's desires. Do you think God is an agent? Okay, well then he has desires.
Yes.
Right? Does he desire for something to happen, or does he desire for something not to happen? If
He
desires
desires
for
for
something not to
something to
happen,
happen.
we say that he's in opposition to that thing obtaining.
What if he's just desiring for the thing to happen?
Well, he has a perfectly efficacious will, right? So if he desires for that something will occur, he's not going to desire something that can't happen. That would be irrational. So it will occur if he desires it.
Why is that irrational for him to want something to not happen?
I think if you can't
Something
analyze
that can't happen in
argument,
any possible world to desire. Look, If there's no,
No,
why
I
would
think you
God
misunderstood. Well, I
desire?
think you misunderstood what he said. He said it would be irrational for him, God, to desire something that cannot happen. Meaning
Yeah.
it's impossible. It would be irrational for God to desire something that's impossible.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure.
I missed the
I,
change
I kind of
translation
disagree
engine.
with
It's
that.
great.
Wait, what are we saying that is impossible?
It's just we're
For
getting clear
God
on
to
our
have
words.
irrational desires.
You're saying God having like a desire for people to do good and it being impossible to happen, that's irrational for him to have that?
Yeah, obviously.
Hmm.
Why would that be irrational? Like I could want, let's say, my kid to do
You
something
could, but
and he
you're not
doesn't do
perfectly
it.
rational,
But
are you?
we're talking about logical possibility.
Okay,
I
so
was
for,
with
It's
I was
it's
with
logically
Jane.
possible. It's logically possible that people do good.
so you're
Look, if
saying
God
that
wants something to happen, it's gonna happen.
Right. I was with Jane where she said that God wouldn't want, or you were saying that okay, it wouldn't
Yeah.
make sense for him to desire something that's not possible.
Right.
That's totally on board with that. Now, what does he want? He wants goodness to exist. That means necessarily evil must exist, and he wants the good to
And
be
what's
the
going to prevent
experience
that?
that everybody has.
But there's possibly a world without evil.
Then there wouldn't be any good.
But there would only be good.
Sans creation, God exists and he was good, correct?
Yeah,
Of
the
course.
idea is that a world without God would still be a good world. Sorry,
well at the beginning of
a world
creation,
without creation
potential.
would be a good world. Like if there was a world where just God existed, right, that would be a good world.
Yeah, because he's all knowing. He is both good and evil. He's all things and greater. He's holy.
He's not good and
God,
evil.
Yeah, when you say he's both good and evil, then it's just kind of like that just seems like then that this
that's a
this
different
stuff.
theology.
Yeah, then we're not.
Yeah.
You're just sort
We're
of.
not
That's
talking
the
about the
theology of
Christian
Christian
God.
Bible.
That's not the Christian God if he's good and evil. That like folds in on
I mean,
Are
itself.
you a Christian?
it says that he
Yeah,
has
yeah, I'm a
knowledge.
Christian.
It says he has knowledge of good and evil, but it doesn't say he's evil.
Yeah.
My conception of Yahweh, the one who is the one who is everything and more that we could ever possibly consider.
That's not the
Okay.
standard Christian.
But
That's
evil
absurd.
is
It's
evil is
clearly
not
heresy.
its own entity. Evil is what is the opposite of good. It's evil became out of the opposition of good. If God is all good, what is not all good is evil. It's not saying God is everything, which means he's evil. It's the opposite of what God is and what he teaches is what evil is.
That's not how I see it, and I would disagree about what his teaching is teaching.
Look, the logical
You
problem of
cannot. That's
evil
not how
is
you can
not
see it, but that's how
aimed
it is.
at evil gods. Okay.
Yeah.
I gave you my conception.
We don't have to take. Look, I'm not even sure I disagree with you about like what like in the Bible or something like that. But the point is, we don't have to take a position on what Christianity is, right? Because you could argue that out with other Christians, right? I'm just saying that if you think God is perfectly good, and the good is opposed to evil, right? And a perfectly good being is opposed to evil, right?
Mhm.
And he's omnipotent, then you're going to have this problem. But if you're just going to not have that theology, then you're not vulnerable to this argument.
Okay, yeah, then I would invite you to change your banner to say defeats churchianity or something, but not what the Lord Jesus Christ came to preach about and what he teaches in the Bible.
No, why would we change the banner?
I'm saying that what I'm describing to you is Christianity.
Yeah, but that's just equivocation on what's meant by Christianity and what most Christians' conception of Christianity would be, right? The other Christians on the panel disagreed with you. That's what Christianity is, right? We're just using that type of model. That's what we mean by Christianity. Not your conception.
He's just saying that Jesus agrees with him, and that's all that really matters.
I mean, to a certain extent, for sure. I think that if you looked at a lot of biblical scholars, they would be on the same page. And so, I mean, to be fair, like I think you're saying that you are looking to destroy a misunderstanding, I would call it, but an understanding that is amongst Christians that's incomplete.
Well, that doesn't matter whether or not you think it's like the true Christianity. The point is, on the banner, the type of Christianity we're talking about is not your conception, whether or not you think scholars agree with it.
It's biblical. Last night I was talking with some Muslims, and they finally they went and looked up what I was saying. They're like, "Oh, this is like consistent with what Paul was saying." And I was like, "Wow,
That's
it's amazing
fine
that
if
Muslim
that-
brother found this
it's,
first."
It's fine if that more
But in
accurately
mockery.
captures the theology. The point is we're just not working with that conception of Christianity.
And that's fair. And that's fair. I'm grateful that I could share with you that that's not the true Christianity then, I would say. Well, that's not the true
Still
face
not
Christianity,
convinced
I
of
should
that, but that's fine.
say. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess we'll head out, y'all. Thanks for this talk. Bruh. So you just have to
Okay,
become a
Jack has to
heretic.
talk with J-Rob.
Yeah.
That's for Joshua and Jane Austen who to talk to J. Rob.
J-Rob conversation.
That
You guys
gave
will
out
love it.
here. Dying to talk with you, and you're dying to talk with him. You just don't know it.
So I had a question earlier when somebody proposed the two worlds where one option was available to commit a crime and the other one there was no option. It was like two separate situations.
Why are you bringing Rason?
Oh, he said he requested. I didn't even see his request. But I thought he's like, hey, Russell, I thought you were like,
His view doesn't even contend with the problem.
yeah. He's one of those, I'm not really a Christian, but I'm a Christian people.
What part is the I'm not really a Christian part?
He's also like super dishonest, but
Monkeyboy, why doesn't my view compete?
I can't even understand you. But
What'd you say?
J-Rob and Joshua would talk.
Hold on, Monkeyboy said that my view, something about my view, or Trey said that I'm not a Christian.
I was making a joke. It's like you do the thing that like other Christians do to get out of the problem of evil by divorcing yourself from like certain views. Yeah.
Oh, so you guys
What is
only
he-
attack
what
like
is
a
he-
literal
You divorced
interpretation of the
yourself
Bible?
from like normativity the last time we spoke.
No, we can go over it, but no, I don't divorce myself from anything. I think I have a very logical understanding of God, and it just overcomes your problem of evil very easily.
Passive desires were identical to God's indifference, remember?
Oh, you said that competing desires are the same thing as indifference. Remember, that's what you said?
Passive desires.
Yeah. You weren't able to grasp the difference between indifference and passive desires.
We're understanding that if God's opposition to evil is entirely passive, that's just what is meant by indifference in this context.
Well, yeah, but I'm just rejecting rejecting that. I don't think it's the same as indifference. Something can be passive
It's
and
semantically identical. What do you mean?
It still has an emotional connection to the choice being made.
I'm not sure what you're disagreeing with.
That's just
We're just saying
equivocating.
it's the same.
That's just equivocating on indifference.
What do you mean equivocating? Passive means that there's still a desire. He's just not going to act on it. It's not the same as indifference.
In the argument, right?
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
In the argument, the way
Yeah, you do know what it means. I can give you an example that highlights it, right?
In the argument, the way that desire is understood is something that potentially rationalizes an action. So you're construing a type of desire that doesn't meet that requirement, right? And you're saying,
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Maybe your mind doesn't. Maybe you're not able to track what's being said. I'll give you an example. Let's say that I have my kids are growing up, right? And they have the option of going to Christmas with the in-laws or Christmas with us, right? I want them to freely choose us, but at the same time, if they don't choose us, I'm not going to force them to come to our house, right? So therefore, I have two competing desires. I want, on one hand, I want them to come to my house. It's a desire of mine, but I'm not going to force them to come to my house, right? So even when they don't come to my house, I'm still affected. I'm still sad. I'm still invested in the choice that was made. So I'm not indifferent in the way that you're trying to make it sound.
no, you're indifferent in the way that I'm understanding what indifference is, right? If it doesn't potentially rationalize an action, right, then that is what indifference is, right? So you're using indifference to mean something else, right?
Have you looked at the definition of indifference?
Doesn't matter. Have you looked it up? If you're using indifference to mean something else, right, and so then you want to say, okay, well, in this other meaning of indifference, God is not indifferent, and that's fine. I'm just saying that by the lights of the argument, God is an indifferent being, right, on the view that you're defending.
Look, I think I'm the one using the verb. Not the verb. I'm the one using the definition correctly. You're the one that's coming up with this obscure definition that just doesn't fit. You're just using it just to make it fit your narrative or your argumentation. It's just stupid. It's dishonest.
Yeah, we're not. Look, nobody's making a claim about correct or incorrect definitions. We're just saying, given these definitions, right, then the God that you believe in is an indifferent God. That's all.
Again, indifference. You're using indifference incorrectly. That's not the way I use indifference. You're making up a new definition so it fits your narrative. It's just a silly argument.
Look, I don't know what you mean by using it incorrectly, right?
Can somebody pull up the definition of indifference?
I'm telling you how the argument how the argument understands indifference. Right?
Can somebody pull up
And
the definition of indifference?
but
I'm
look,
tired of Jack making up.
the dictionary definition is not relevant to how the word is used in the argument.
So it's the definition that we normally use just not relevant to the conversation because you want to
What do
make
you
up
mean
a
we?
definition
He's
that
just saying
fits
it's just not true
the
that he
narrative
uses it
he's
in
trying
that
to
way.
push.
I don't know what you
I mean,
mean
it's just clear that I overcame your silly argument, and you just don't know how to you don't know what to do, right? You're just stuck.
I don't think that you overcame it because like you can just say something like, well, is God going to be successful with respect to his desires? And the answer to that is just going to be no.
Hey, Trey, did you listen that he's got multiple desires
Yeah.
and one can overshadow one desire?
Yeah, but is God going to be successful with respect to all of his desires?
No, that's what it means. If it has competing desires, it would negate that one desire would overshadow the other one, right? Like I gave you the example about the in-laws and my kids coming to
I know,
Christmas,
but
right?
if you're going to say that, like, so you don't, just so we're clear, you don't think God is infallible?
What I don't understand. You're not even tracking with what's being argued. I don't know what.
I don't think you're tracking what I'm saying.
Do
Do you think God is infallible?
What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
It's a different horn to the argument.
No, but you're just pivoting to something else that is irrelevant to the conversation we're
I don't
having.
understand. How are you not tracking? That's just what we mean by indifference.
Hey, monkey boy. Okay, indifference is not the same as having competing desires.
No, it is. That's how we're using
No,
it.
it isn't. Well, I don't care how you're using it. I'm using the definition that's understood by most people.
Okay, wait. So then that just means you're not engaging with our point if you're not understanding the way we're using it.
Yeah,
we're not using it in the way whatever
disingenuous
recourse or dictionary source you're using.
I just
What
don't
is a
like
non-made up definition? What is a non-made up definition?
Disingenuous people that like change
How are we being
definitions to fit their
disingenuous?
narrative. It's just
Disingenuous?
it's just a way of
Wait,
arguing.
how are we being disingenuous? We never
Why
claimed
don't
to
you
use
use the
it.
definition that I'm using? If it's an internal critique, if you're criticizing my view, why don't you use my definition?
Okay, the point is, under your definition, God's not indifferent. Under ours, he is.
We're not
Do you
criticizing.
understand how ours it is?
It's not an internal critique of you where God is understood to be morally indifferent.
Yeah, the internal critique doesn't deal with your semantics either. Did he drop or?
He dropped.
I'm not really tracking.
I didn't.
He seems to think that there are like correct and incorrect definitions.
Yeah, I don't know what that is about the normal.
He wasn't going to give up on that.
definition.
So he wasn't going to give up on that. So I was just going to go the infallible route. Like if God is infallible, and then none of his desires are going to fail, whether they're passive or are active.
Nah, but so
He's
they're
just
right.
gonna understand infallibility a different way.
Y'all just gotta make up definitions to make an argument work. It's silly.
What is a non-made up definition?
And I say you guys make up definitions to make an argument work.
What makes you think it's made up and not actually standardly used in this academic sense?
Yeah, because nobody holds to these definitions.
Wait, can you show
Do you
that?
have an argument for that?
Yeah. Every Christian that
just present the argument. No. We never said it. We never made the claim that all Christians use it that way.
So every time you guys
That's
talk
just shifting
to
the
Christians,
goalpost.
you guys talk to Christians. Every time you guys run these arguments, every time you run these arguments, we say we disagree with that definition. It always comes down
but that's
to that.
that's not an argument. Let's get clear what's the argument. That most people don't use it this way.
Okay, yeah, most Christians don't use it this way.
Okay,
but
so
I don't see how it really matters. I don't see how it really matters, right? The key point is that plenty of people, when they understand what it means to say that a person is good, that he's opposed to evil, right? And that he will seek to eliminate evils wherever he can.
Yeah, see,
right?
that's not
And
it.
so if Christians say, well, when we say God is a perfectly good being, we don't mean something like that, well, that's fine, right? I don't know what this other notion of good is that you have in mind. And maybe only Christians can know it, right? But for any Christian who wants to say that God is perfectly good in that everyday sense, right, then there's going to be this problem if he's all powerful and if evil obtains, right?
Yeah, if we say God is maximally good, then that would mean that his ways are higher than ours, automatically. And
now it sounds like
if I can finish that, that would mean his ways are above ours, and that would mean automatically if his ways are above ours, then some things that he does will be perceived as evil because they go against our.
Now you are vulnerable to the argument then, because if all you're saying is that things are misdescribed as evil, right? None of that matters, right? We're just concerned with whether anything is evil by God's light, which is to say that there's anything that obtains that God thinks is undesirable.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, well then in that case, your God can't be omnipotent.
No, that's not true. Just because I don't desire something, just because he doesn't desire something, doesn't mean he intends on preventing that from happening.
Well, so
That, 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 that has nothing. That has nothing
right,
to do with omnipotence.
we're
That has
understanding
nothing.
desire here as something that potentially rationalizes an action. So I mean,
Well,
if you're going to
again,
use
here you
desire,
go.
you could
Here you
use
go with your
desire.
definitions.
You could use desire in the sense that Russell was using it, right? Where to have a desire doesn't necessarily potentially rationalize any action, right? Some desires don't potentially rationalize actions, right? But that's not what we're talking about.
Okay, we'll use a different word.
Yeah, but I don't know what you're talking about when you talk about desires like that. But that's fine. Yeah, if you think there's some sense in which God has a desire that X not occur, but that desire, the way you're construing desire is such that it doesn't potentially rationalize any action by God to prevent X from occurring. I don't know what it is that you're talking about, but yeah, that's not necessarily inconsistent. It's just not really intelligible to me, you know?
Yeah, so intentions and desires are two different things, right? Just because I desire something doesn't mean that I intend to have that
Yeah.
desire.
Did anything that I say imply that they were the same thing?
Well, I didn't say it did, right? I'm letting you know when you're having these discussions, maybe you should use a different term than desire because you keep having the same problem every time some Christian comes up here and talks to you.
Yeah, so when I say potentially rationalize an action, right, that means that in some worlds, he doesn't have the intention.
Okay.
Point is, there must be some worlds where he does, right? That's what it means for it to potentially rationalize an action. There must be some worlds where it does.
Yeah, he's just asking if there's a possible world in which God rationalizes an action, or if God acts to prevent an evil. And if there is a possible world, then all things considered, that evil should be prevented. So, J-Rob, is there like a possible world where God prevents the Holocaust?
Is there a possible world? Honestly, that's not even like. I feel like that's an invalid
Logically possible. Yeah, it is. But the
question
point is, it
because
makes no sense to say.
obviously God can create a world that has no humans in it. So yeah, obviously the Holocaust will not arise in that world.
Do you understand how it
So
wouldn't make sense to say God desires things that aren't possible?
who said he does?
I never said that anyone said he does.
Okay, so why are you bringing it up?
Do you understand how it doesn't make sense to say God desires something that's not possible?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So that means that in some world it must obtain that God can stop it.
Of course, God could stop it.
Okay, so then that does potentially rationalize the action.
How so? Just because he's capable of doing something again?
That just means if it's actuated in some possible world, and that just means given certain conditions that it can obtain in the actual world. So it can be rationalized, right?
I mean, there's literal war going on at the moment, and you're talking about the Holocaust. I'm not saying it's completely irrelevant, but there's other relevant things. And if you were to dive into those things, you would see what they're actually going on about. What's
What are you
actually taking
talking about
place
right now?
is spiritual warfare.
What do you think our point was?
Wait, Lion. Yeah, it was just an example.
The Holocaust was.
What?
What do you think the point of us bringing up the Holocaust was?
I said you could literally mention something happening today.
But what do you think the point of us bringing up the Holocaust was?
I mean, you're trying to say if God is real, why wouldn't he stop it, pretty much? Why didn't he stop it?
Right, so he could have used any example. He could have used, why did Johnny Smith kick a puppy on Tuesdays?
Why were Jews killed? For what?
Oh my God, he's going to justify it now?
I'm not justifying anything. I'm asking you the same question that you asked me that you didn't have an answer for. It's a tough question, isn't it?
No, it isn't, because we don't have
No, it isn't,
problem.
but you couldn't answer it in a split of a second. Okay, so it's a tough question that you didn't have an answer for.
No, idiot. Look, the point is,
No, don't
the
call me
issues
an
on your
idiot.
behalf.
Don't disrespect me, buddy.
Oh my God.
Your question was, why did he use the Holocaust as an example? It's just a very common example of something that's obviously evil. If you want, he could have used any example. It was just a very common example of something that's obviously evil. That's the answer to your question.
Yeah, he was getting hung up on it. I feel like he was gonna go into like Holocaust denying shit, but back on topic. Monkeyboy was saying something.
Gone now, so we could talk with this other dude, Leo.
All I gotta say is, if you don't believe God, go in hell.
Nice job there, buddy.
I mean, it do be fatal.
I didn't even hear what he said.
So
But
you can't believe in God.
answer
It's something not to take serious. Whose question?
J-Rob's.
What's my? I didn't have what question? I didn't ask
Sure,
a
what
question.
question he had.
I forgot the question.
I didn't ask a question.
Oh. Well, do you see the point we're making?
No, I still don't. I mean, I forgot what was that. I mean, last thing I remember you saying is, desire means he could potentially act upon, and there's a possible world where he could act upon that desire.
That's right. So the idea is something like, I might, let's say I don't actually have the power to administer a shot that causes pain to a child, but also protects the child from disease, right? I don't have the power to administer that shot without causing the pain. But I want to say that the pain is undesirable, right? What I really care about is the disease prevention, but I would like to eliminate the pain if I can, right? Well, that just means that if I were rational and I was presented with an option to administer the vaccine without causing the pain, that's what I would do, right? At least all else equal. So that's what it means to say that the pain is undesirable. It potentially rationalizes an action for me to avert the pain, right? In conditions where I could. Like if there were advanced technology.
Background's really loud.
If there were like advanced technology or something like that, that allowed you to administer a shot, or if there was an anesthetic or, whatever, some other way to administer the protection from the disease, right?
But I almost agree with you up until the point where you said you act upon that desire if you could, right? Just because you could act upon desire don't mean you would or you will.
No, you would. What I'm saying is all else equal, right? What's the reason why I cause the pain to the child? Because there's no other way I can achieve the greater good, right? There's no other way available to me, right, at the time and place that I'm at, where I can achieve the greater good of protecting him from disease without that pain accompanying it, right? But
Okay,
if I say that the pain is nonetheless undesirable, what I'm saying is that if I were to find out that in a drawer there was another way of administering the disease-preventing agent without causing the pain, then I would be rationally required to select that option.
Yeah, I disagree.
Not use the pain-causing one, right?
Yeah,
At least
disagree.
all else equal, right?
I disagree. You could have other reasons why you would.
No, that's what the all else equal is about.
He already stipulated all else equal, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
what
no
the
other
all else
reasons.
equal is about, is there's no other reasons.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so that there's a possible world then where you could administer the pain. Sorry, you could administer a disease-preventing agent, and you would do so, right? Given that you care about it and you're rational, right? You would do so if you were at that world, right? And that's what it means to say that it's undesirable, is that's what you would do in those conditions.
Okay, in those conditions, yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. But see, the point is, people who appeal to this free will defense, right, they're saying God thinks this thing is undesirable, but there's no conditions under which he would act to prevent what he considers undesirable from obtaining. There are no possible conditions like that.
Yeah, because it's required to have like love. So it's not something that God could, upon his own will, choose for the individual.
Wait.
Well, love doesn't have anything to do with having the freedom to reject it, right? Because God loves as well, right? And there's love in heaven, right?
This is going to be the third time I address this to both of y'all. We're talking about love between God and imperfect agents. In order to have love between those imperfect agents,
I don't understand. Are people in heaven perfect? Is that the idea?
I'm going to address this again. Maybe you weren't here for the first time I addressed it. I said those imperfect agents would have to be given they would have to been given a choice, and the agents that are in heaven, have made the choice.
No. The point is, are they imperfect agents or not?
Yeah.
Okay, so then it's logically possible to be an imperfect agent and never have the capacity to.
No, that wasn't what I said. So you're straw man.
Sorry, do people in heaven have the possibility to not love?
You're still straw manning me.
I'm just asking you a question. Do people in heaven have the capacity? Do people in heaven? Look, I'm trying to clarify what your position is. Just answer the question. Do people in heaven? Do people in heaven? Do people in heaven have the capacity to not love?
No.
Okay, so then it's not the case that, because you've now agreed that they're imperfect beings, they don't have the capacity to not love. So it's not the case that there's any logical requirement that for an imperfect being to love, it has the capacity. It has the capacity to not love.
He wants to add this conditional that they have to be able to have had that choice in the first place.
Why?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Because love requires a choice.
Look, you could define love that way. That you could define love.
So you're saying
as,
you don't have the choice to love?
Sorry, God doesn't have the choice, right?
It's up to his nature. He acts according to his nature.
But he never had that choice to not love.
Yeah, he never had the choice not to love, right?
So again, we're talking about imperfect agents, not perfect. God is love.
Yeah, so you want to say there's some type of love, right, that doesn't logically require. You want to say there's some type of love that logically requires the capacity to reject the beloved, right, or something like that, right?
Well, love is a relationship, right? So to have a relationship, right, with it, when we're talking about between a perfect agent and a imperfect agent, then the imperfect agent has to be able to make a choice to love.
Well, no, because in heaven, an imperfect agent doesn't have that capacity.
Bro, I told you they were given the choice and they made the choice. That's why they're in heaven, because they were given the choice.
But the capacity goes away, is what he's saying.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They made the choice. I just said
but if the capacity goes away, then God could have created agents like that.
No, they had to make the choice. Oh my God, I don't get it.
What J-Rob? How are you not understanding that if the capacity goes away, they're no longer loving agents?
No, that's false. It's a choice. I said in order to have a loving relationship, you have had to be given a choice, and they were given a choice, and now they have that relationship.
No, but your principle is that in order to be in a loving, you're saying, are you switching the principle to now you have had that choice?
I've been saying this the whole time.
Okay, so at some point,
do y'all think we should?
Okay, let me just tease.
Marriage,
hold on. Let me just tease this out. Let's just say that my wife. Let's just say my wife agrees to marry me, and then in that marriage, after she agrees to marry me, I give her a potion that forces her to love me forever. Is that still love? Even because at some point she was given.
So no, because these are two imperfect agents. We're talking about love being made perfect with.
No, we're talking. No. We're talking about between two agents. We're just talking about the idea of love being genuine between two agents.
No, well, that's not what I'm talking about. That wasn't my claim. So you're building a straw man again.
I'm not building a straw man. It seems like you're just like
I said
I don't
between
know
a
what the
perfect
fallacy is,
agent.
but like
I said between a perfect agent and an imperfect agent. Now you're going to two imperfect agents, and now you're talking about coercion.
In any
I'm not.
case, none of it is going to matter because the question is still going to, right? Is it undesirable to God? You can't hear me?
I can hear you now.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. The question is just still going to be, right? In virtue of what is it undesirable to God that these agents do this if it doesn't potentially rationalize some action to prevent it from obtaining, right? You could just think about it as something like, you could just think about it as something like a bad thing, right? Like, I really, really, really don't want you to do this, right? Now, if I'm powerless, right, then I can't stop you, right? But then that just means that if somebody then gave me the power to stop it, I would, right? So this is why I was talking about indifference earlier, right? Like God doesn't care enough to prevent people from not doing this thing that he thinks is bad. He doesn't care enough to stop it, right? He thinks it's bad for them to do it, supposedly, but there's nothing he's willing to do, right, to prevent it from happening. So we're just saying that's just an empty notion of undesirability, right?
No, it's not, because again.
Well, in any case, it doesn't conform to the notion of undesirability that's at play here, right? Because we're saying that a perfectly good being is one whose moral desires are equivalent to the good, right? So he only desires the good, and he desires every good, right? And so, if we're understanding desirability as something that, if we're understanding a desire as something that potentially rationalizes an action, right, then it would have to be the case for him to think that it's undesirable is to say that there is some possible world where he would act in accord with that desire. He would act to fulfill that desire, which is to say that this thing not obtain, right?
So I guess I'm confused on how you're using potentiality, right? You're saying that he could create, there's another world, a hypothetical
Put out
world.
for me.
Huh?
Yeah, what? Possible worlds, right? The idea is like, yeah. So the idea is that it's possible. There are worlds in which you can prevent disease without causing pain, right? There are worlds in which different natural laws obtain, or where there are advanced technologies, right, that allow you to do one rather than the other. Allow you to have one without the other. Sorry, and so at those worlds, right, a being who thinks that pain is undesirable, right, who's aiming at that kind of good, will aim to realize that good in the ways that eliminate that undesirable feature, right?
Okay, but you're talking about a potential world, right? When now we're talking about a world, that potential world would be basically a world that doesn't have love in it, and this world does have love in it,
but
and
look,
that's why it's more desirable.
But look, if you're saying it's not possible, then it doesn't make sense to say that God thinks it's undesirable, right?
Wait, say it again. Say it again.
If you're saying it's not possible for God to have the one without the other, it doesn't make sense to say it's undesirable, because what it means to say it's undesirable is that it potentially rationalizes an action, right?
Potentially, yeah.
That it is possible to be in accord with the desire, right? But if you're saying it's not possible for there to be a world where God acts on that desire, then it doesn't make sense in this context to say that it's undesirable to God.
I don't get how you're conflating that. Just because something is potential and possible doesn't necessitate that.
I'm saying that what desires are are something that such that it is possible for an agent to be moved to act to realize them.
Okay,
Right.
just because it's possible, that doesn't mean that this is that world in which that
Well, I
desire.
understand that it isn't, but the point is, you're saying that he wouldn't do it at any world.
I'm saying in this world.
No, but you're saying there are other worlds where he would act to prevent that same thing from obtaining?
I mean, it potentially, possibly, yeah, sure.
I don't get it.
Yeah, a world where he creates no humans and no love.
No. I'm saying, I'm asking, under what conditions would he say that, this is a bad thing, I don't want it to happen, and so therefore I'm going to act in this way to prevent it from happening?
Yeah, like I said, in a world where there's no people and no love, he prevents it from happening.
Yeah, but is that a better world?
No, otherwise that would be the world that exists.
Yeah, so then it's not possible for a perfectly good being to actualize a worse world.
Wait, that's how do you go from one extreme to the next?
It's not a counterexample. You're saying that God must actualize the best possible world, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so if that world would be better, that's the world that he would select.
I didn't say it would be better. You.
But if it would be worse, then it's not possible. God can only exist at the best possible world.
Possible. You're saying it is possible. I don't get.
No, it's not possible.
Yeah. What do you mean?
No, because God would have chosen to do something that was worse, and God can only choose to do the best possible thing.
It's logically possible.
No, it's not logically possible because it's not consistent with God's property of being perfectly good, and God's property of being all.
Paused, Jack.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. So God could have. There's all kinds of goods God could do. God's infinitely good. So God is choosing to do this world because it's
You said it's a worse world. He's not going to bring into being a worse world.
Just because it could be. It would just be a different world.
Okay, if it would be a different world, right, then it's a matter of indifference that people do this thing, right? Because the point of if it were really undesirable, then that would mean he would choose a world where he could have the good feature without the bad feature, right? But you're saying the world in which he does do that is no better and no worse than this world. Then that means that people who make these choices is a matter of indifference, because in virtue of doing that, it's not actually a worse world than God could have where people didn't make these choices.
Indifferent, like no. So morally, these things will always be wrong, no matter what.
A matter of indifference with respect to God's aim to having the best possible world.
Well, God's aim to having the best possible world is God creating the world where agents have free will with the capacity to. That doesn't somehow change the fact that moral evils are still morally evil.
I'm saying that if it's morally, I'm saying that if God is aiming at the best possible world. All right? Yeah, I ordered already. Yes. Yes. God is aiming at the best possible world, right? So he's going to select a world. He's going to select a world where he can achieve that greatness. He's going to reject worlds that have evils in them that if they obtain will mean the world is less than best, right? And so if he can have the best possible world, right, where if he can have the best possible world without these things that are undesirable obtaining, right, then obviously that's the world that he's going to actualize. But if you're saying that the only other worlds that God could actualize are ones that are equally good, right, then it's actually a matter of indifference that these actions obtain, right? Because he can have just as good a world with them obtaining, with them not obtaining, right? So it makes no difference whether they obtain or not. So it doesn't make sense to say that they're undesirable to God. That's the point.
I mean, I would say he's indifferent to them in obtaining, in the sense of they have no bearing on which world he actualizes, but they still are undesirable from a moral sense.
Well, look, we're just understanding. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, we're just understanding undesirable as what would move a good being to act to eliminate. Right. All else equal.
What will move him to act, all else equal?
Would move him to act to eliminate them, all else equal. Right. So just like going back to the vaccine case, to say that the pain is undesirable is to say that a good person who's rational will be moved to find a way to aim at the good in question without the accompanying evil if he has that option, under conditions when he has that option, right? So if it turns out that there's another type of shot in a drawer that is painless, or there's an anesthetic, right? And there's no additional bads that would accompany selecting those options, right? Then he'd be rationally required to prefer those options to the one where he causes the pain. So he would be moved to act in that way, given that he's good and that he's rational.
Well, again,
really quick.
Again, his intentions on actualizing the world is only based on the desire for love to exist. So that
just means that if that's all that he cares about, then it's a matter of indifference whether people reject him or not.
Well, again, that's the intentions of creation. So the reason he created is not for agents to do evil or good, right? The reasons he created were for love to exist. Now, out of that love, right, he has desires that agents don't do evil, but that's not the reason he actualized the world. And this kind of goes back to that video game. Right? Wait, Jack. This goes back to the video game analogy I gave you that you just kept running around. You didn't address it.
Because it's not really analogous.
It's completely analogous.
Really
100% analogous.
Really quick. Hey, Jack. Whenever you're not talking, would you mind muting? Because we can hear all the stuff in the background. Thank you. That's I just couldn't hear J-Rob when he was talking. I apologize.
So God can't fail, right?
You said, can God fail? Is that what you said?
Yeah, can God fail?
No.
So if he aims to create a world in which there's love, he's going to get that world, right?
Right.
So then what you're saying is the only thing he cares about is having a world that has love in it. If that's the only thing that he cares about, then people who reject him is not undesirable by his lights. He's indifferent to that. Because if he weren't indifferent to it, that would mean that he cared about that too, and that it would potentially rationalize some action.
No, because out of love, you still have jealousy, and he's a jealous God. He's a just God.
And if he does care about it, you're back on the other horn of the dilemma.
No.
Right?
I'm saying that there are other entailments with love, right? So it's not that he's. I'm not. You're saying indifferent. I don't know in what sense you mean indifferent when out of love you have.
Explain to you what I mean by indifferent, right?
Yeah.
So let's go back to the vaccine case, right? The indifferent agent is one who, even if he has the option to administer the vaccine without causing the pain, doesn't care. That means he's indifferent to the pain obtaining, right? And so I'm asking the same thing. If it's the case that he thinks such and such is undesirable, people rejecting him. If he thinks that's undesirable, yes, please. If he thinks that's undesirable, then then
he would do something about
yeah,
it.
he would do something about it. Thank you. At least
Yeah,
under
yeah,
some, under some conditions, right?
yeah. So again, out of love, he he allows people to make the choice. People choose evil.
Asking what he would do to prevent them from doing what he considers undesirable. I don't know, it might be a little noisy here, so Josh, would you like to just sort of stand in my stead until I finish this sandwich? Because otherwise, if I leave my mic unmuted, people are probably going to complain about the background.
I might be cutting in and out though, so I don't know how good my connection's going to be.
I'll be back in I'm just going to mute up. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
I don't understand why you keep saying that the world is necessary for love when love existed prior to creation. So obviously keeping the world creation is not necessary for love. And then I also don't see how you draw these entailments that jealousy is entailed by love.
Well,
or any of these other things that you're saying.
So I addressed your first part multiple times now. When I'm just colloquially,
I didn't hear it.
Just saying love, right? But what I'm talking about is love with imperfect agents. All right. So when I say love, that's what I'm talking about. Having a relationship with imperfect agents. In order to have that relationship, you have to have imperfect agents have the capacity to choose to not love.
Morally imperfect agents, right?
Sure. I mean, morally.
So God is choosing to have a particular kind of love with morally imperfect agents, right? It's like some special kind of love. It's not the love that exists prior to creation. He's choosing to have a love for morally imperfect agents. For what reason? Does he have a reason for that? Or is it just random?
No, it's because it's his nature.
So the reason is his nature.
Yes, within his nature. He is love, and love expresses itself in this way.
Yeah, so the reason he does it is because he has to do it, right? It's in his nature. He can't do otherwise.
So it's not that he has to. It's just that's his nature.
Well, can he go against his nature?
Going against his nature is not the same as acting.
Is that his nature?
Wait, no, it's not. It's not the same as acting according to your nature.
Wait, can he act out of accord with his nature?
No, obviously not. But that's not the same as saying that he has to do something, right?
Okay, so he has to create.
Well, he's logically required to act in accordance with his nature.
I didn't say that, right? So I'm saying that, okay, like
I think that's an implication of what you're saying. I'm not saying.
No, it's not, right? I have the nature into which I have an appetite to eat food, right?
I asked why he created.
Wait, hold on. But I can act according to my nature and still not choose to eat food. So just because it's within his nature to create doesn't mean that he has to act.
Wait. I don't know that it is. But yeah, but we're talking about his essential nature, right?
Yeah. So he
it's
doesn't.
not my essential nature to eat, right? Because that would mean when I'm not eating, I'm not essentially a human.
Yeah, I didn't say that it was his essential.
So is love a part of his essential nature?
Yeah.
Okay, then he must act in accordance with that. He has no option.
So like now you're saying something else. So
he's logically required to.
No, because we're talking about loving imperfect agents, right? So he doesn't have to.
You said he had to.
No. That's literally what I'm saying. He didn't have to create imperfect
agents.
In
his essential nature to love.
Yes,
love
to love
must be expressed in all of these different ways. Then he must create an imperfect world, so that they're imperfect creatures. So we can have this little love asterisk expression of his love superset nature.
That's not what I said.
I don't know if that's what you said. But that's the implication of what you said.
Him creating imperfect agents is up to his free will choice. He doesn't have to act on.
Okay. So he doesn't have to create, right?
Right.
Even though it's in his nature to create and to express his love, he could choose not to, right?
Right.
So then his nature doesn't explain the creation of the world.
So
when I asked you why did he create, you said it's in his nature.
Yeah, so within his nature, right, is to express love, right? So within that nature, he chooses. If I can finish,
you can't just say a choice.
He chooses to express love in this way.
But why?
Because of again, his choice to express love in this way. That's
But
he
why
makes
did
he
he
makes the
choose?
choice.
What
Oh my
rationalizes the
goodness.
choice?
Yes, his desires.
Explains those.
So God created the world.
Wait, are we switching people now?
Oh yeah,
Let's just get clear. What explains his desires?
I'm sorry.
What explains his desires? His nature. His nature explains his desires. He
So then it's not his choice,
back to
dum
square
dum.
one.
yes, it is. You can have desires and still not make a choice to create.
Wait, we asked what allows him to make these choices out of accord with his nature. You said his desires. What explains his desires is his nature. So his nature explains how he can act out of accord with his nature. Nice
You
one,
said
Einstein.
what explains his desires, not his choices.
Yeah, but what explains his desires is you said his nature.
You said his desires
Yeah.
explain his choices.
Yes, you can have. He has desires that are according with his
nature explains
and
his
he
desires.
chooses-
His desires rationalize his choices, but somehow he could have chosen otherwise.
What I didn't. Yeah, they rationalize his choices, but his will is
Look, it really doesn't
said
make
what?
any. It really doesn't make any difference because let's just grant, for the sake of argument, that God has like this libertarian free will, and there are two options that are available to him, which are equally good. One is to create a world with creatures like us, and one is to not create at all, right? And that which one obtains is just some brute contingent fact, right? Which world gets actualized is just some brute contingent fact, right? The point is that that's just going to mean that these so-called undesirable events or actions, right, that creatures like us undertake are something that God is indifferent to.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, he would prefer one creation to the other. or to the
Exactly.
not-creation.
But you're
Yeah.
saying that both options are equally available to him, right? And that just means that a world without these actions obtaining is a matter of indifference, because he could have that world, right? But it would be no better and no worse.
Yeah, because he can't choose the worst option, right? I mean, we agree
Right?
there.
He can't choose the worst option, right?
So it must be the case that given these two, one isn't obviously better than the other. So
Right.
God must be indifferent on whatever that distinction happens to be between the two worlds.
Exactly.
And the difference being the existence of imperfect moral beings, God must be indifferent to.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that doesn't follow. Again, he creates his world so love can be expressed.
Okay,
with
we walked you down
imperfect
the
ways.
rational
just ignoring
thought
it.
process.
And
We walked you through
No,
the
no, that
logical
doesn't-
entailments.
that doesn't
and you
entail
just-
indifference.
Instead of actually addressing the argument, you just
That doesn't
say,
entail
no,
indifference.
that doesn't follow. Show where it doesn't
yeah,
follow. Where does it not follow?
because you're not addressing my point where I said that out of his love that entails justice for so somebody does something wrong to somebody you love, you have righteous indignation to execute justice. So all these things that you are saying, you are trying to
We're
attribute
saying-
to, you're
we're
trying
saying
to-
that what-
you're trying to
we're
attribute
saying-
to indifference.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just
Guys,
just
I've
we're
been
saying-
for about 40
We're
minutes.
saying what? Well, we're
Can
saying
y'all
that what?
give me a
We're
definition
saying
of
that.
what you think God is real quick?
Well, definition of what?
What you think God is? Like, how do you define God? Because you're just using the word over and over.
We're using the word, the God of classical theism.
Something like that. But look, we're understanding indifference
I
here.
didn't quite hear you. There
We're
was
under-
interruptions.
God of classical theism, he said. We're understanding indifference here.
Being
to-
that encompasses all characteristics. Sorry.
I think this is just going to be a tangent. I think this is just going to be a. I think it's just going to be a tangent right now. So maybe we can address that later. So, yeah, we're understanding indifference here to mean that God will be moved to. We're understanding difference here to mean a being that will not be moved to act in accord with eliminating some evil where he can do so.
So that's what your definition of indifferent is?
Yeah, because I used the example of the vaccine, right? The good person is somebody who, when he opens the drawer and sees that there's an anesthetic there, which will allow him to administer the disease-protecting agent without causing the pain to the child, will be moved to select that option. The different person, it doesn't matter either way which option is taken. He doesn't care.
Yeah, but you're saying that
the fact that one option, another way to put it is the fact that one option is worse, right, doesn't actually figure in any way into his evaluation of what he ought to do.
But okay, you're saying indifferent to a possible world, and I don't. I'm failing to understand how that deals with the fact that if he's creating a world, if he's creating a world where love can be expressed, right, with imperfect agents, how can he be indifferent to evil if within this world, right? Well, I guess if you're using a definition where you're saying that he doesn't do anything about it, right, or prevent it. He doesn't prevent it from occurring. Then okay, sure, I could.
It doesn't
we go
move
with that.
him.
We could go with that, but
but if you think God is a morally, if you think,
time out, let me finish. I don't agree with your definitions, right?
I don't know what disagree with definition stuff is.
Yeah,
Right?
because
I'm just telling you the definitions that are in use in the argument.
I don't see indifference as, hey, I don't see indifference to, I have
disagree
to,
with definitions.
or I'm not willing to prevent something.
The dumbest crap ever.
J-Rob, let's take Jack's example with the vaccine, and a guy opens the drawer and he sees the anesthetic next to it, right? You're saying God, your God right now, is looking at the anesthetic, and he feels bad that he doesn't choose to use the anesthetic.
Exactly.
Is that right?
That he feels bad that he doesn't.
Yeah, he feels bad that there's pain that he knows he's going to cause, that he knows that he could prevent, and he chooses nonetheless to not use the anesthetic. That must mean that he's indifferent to it.
That's right.
You're saying no, he just feels bad about it.
So if I feel bad about it, that means I'm indifferent to it?
We're saying that merely feeling bad about it, right, doesn't mean you're not indifferent. What makes you indifferent, right, is that you don't actually do what's morally required, right? Which in this case is to choose to administer the anesthetic as well as the shot, so that the child doesn't feel the pain.
Nah, I still wouldn't say that's morally indifferent.
Yeah, but then you're just equivocating on indifference. I'm just saying that's what we're understanding indifferent being to be.
And that's what I was saying. Like, that's what I was trying to say. Like, if that's how you're defining indifferent, then okay, sure.
Yeah, so there's no logical problem of evil if you take God to be a morally indifferent being. The argument targets views of God. The argument targets a view of God where when God opens the drawer, right, he doesn't merely shed some tears.
Zach, you're doing it again, bro. You're doing it again.
Where he doesn't merely shed some tears.
You're doing it again.
The argument doesn't target a view of God where when God opens the drawer, he doesn't merely shed some tears as he causes pain to the baby that he could avoid while achieving the good that he wants to achieve, right? The very fact that it would cause pain morally compels him, compels him to select the anesthetic option, right? Rather than the non-anesthetic, the non-anesthetic option. Yeah.
If a doctor is opening this drawer and he sees the anesthetic, he sees the vaccine, and he knows the vaccine's going to cause the pain, he knows he could prevent it, and he nonetheless takes out the vaccine and injects the child without the anesthetic, but he feels bad about it, are you going to say he's a good doctor? That he acted morally?
So it's not analogous, but
no,
I don't.
It's perfectly analogous.
Again, I don't agree with the definition.
It's perfectly analogous.
It's not analogous because God it's not analogous because God just doesn't feel bad about evil.
We can address.
No,
oh my goodness.
No, we've already established. Wait. I don't want you to make this point. I don't want you to make this point that the two. No, I don't want you to make. I don't want you.
God just feels bad,
Trey.
Right? I believe God actually does something about evil.
No, he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, he does do.
What did he do?
When
the Holocaust happened? What are you talking about?
Just let me finish.
But J-Rob, the thing about J-Rob and these theists is that when they get
the point is that on your view, the point is that on your view, God could have. The point is that on your view, God could have an equally good world, right? Without those things happening in it, right? That just means it's a matter of indifference by God's lights, whether they happen or not, right? If it weren't a matter of indifference. If it weren't a matter of indifference, God would select the better world. Right? But you're saying there is no better world. So it is a matter of indifference. There's only equally good worlds.
So no, I've already addressed this earlier when I said that his position on instantiating a world. Yeah, it was the reason he instantiated the world is indifferent to whether or not evil actualizes within the world. The reason he instantiates. Let me finish. If I can finish. The reason he instantiates the world is for love, right? But that doesn't somehow make him indifferent to evil itself, right? But that's not the reason he instantiated the world, was to prevent evil. It has no bearing. This is the reason why
You're just equivocating.
No, just the reason.
You're just equivocating. You're equivocating on indifference.
No, you're
Stop doing that.
I don't agree with your definition.
Okay, we've been over this numerous times, right? We've set up the definitions that are at play in the argument, right? So it's not about agreeing or not agreeing to them, right? These are the definitions that are in play, right? And so with respect to the definitions that are in play, right, when you say God is indifferent, you're just equivocating. Sorry, when you say God is not indifferent, you're just equivocating.
No, you're talking about in two different senses, right? So in one sense...
I specified the sense that I mean, right? And I've used it consistently. Okay, I haven't equivocated at all. You're the one who's equivocating.
No, I'm saying in two different senses, right?
That's what equivocation is. That's what equivocation is. That's what equivocation is.
Okay, Jack, let's go back. Let's go back a second. When I told you that the video game analogy I gave you, let me actually hear you deal with my analogy.
No, I'm not interested in that.
Right? Yeah, I know you're not interested in it.
No, I don't care.
Because you hate the.
I don't care about any analogy. I just want you to address the argument.
Because you hate.
Yeah, I'm not interested in your opinions about what my deeper reasons are. Trey, can you put a stop to the meta?
Yeah. Kick me because he doesn't.
Trey,
we just want you to.
Not interested in the meta. We just want you to engage with the argument.
He ran from it then. And
nobody cares.
Bro, every time it seems like we're getting somewhere with J-Rob, you do this thing where you just like.
No. He won't deal with my argument.
Not interested.
Deal with my points.
No, I want you to engage with the argument I've given.
Exactly. So Trey, as you see, right? We were having a conversation. We were getting somewhere, but he won't ever deal with my points. So
no, we weren't.
He goes in panic mode.
You keep getting hung up.
He calls Trey, stop him from talking. He's making a point that I don't want to deal with. Like,
wait, what's your argument? Your argument is that you're saying you don't agree with the definition. Is that your hang up?
No. So I'm saying that you can have two different senses. There's two different senses in which you might be, where something might be good or
we've consistently used the same sense.
Yeah, J-Rob is making an argument for equivocation.
You're developing
it's
a new sense.
No, I'm not. So I'm saying
use it in the same sense Jack's been using it.
J-Rob, do you know what equivocation means?
Yes.
What does it mean?
It's when you're trying to basically say it's almost like a contradiction.
It means you're using the same term in two different senses. Right? We're not doing that. We're understanding indifference in a consistent way. And we're just saying that the God that you are defending, right, is morally indifferent in the sense specified. And if that's the case, right, then he's not targeted by our argument.
So again, so if you're saying that in the sense that he wants to prevent all evil, right, or he doesn't want to prevent all evil from actualizing, sure, I already said I'm okay with that, right? But in the sense that he wants humans to have the experience of love, no.
So I don't even understand what you're saying.
Bro, I literally said that when God created this world, right? He was indifferent to whether or not evil was actualized.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. So you've conceded the argument.
Yeah, he's the doctor that's pulling open the drawer. He doesn't seem to realize that the implication of this is that God is immoral.
No, it's not.
That's what he's not tracking, Jack. He thinks it's
Say it again.
He doesn't track that the doctor who's opening the drawer knows that the anesthetic is going to work, knows it won't have any additional side effects, chooses not to use it, feels bad about it, is nonetheless immoral.
Yeah, that's not immoral because he could have a greater reason.
No, we're saying all else equal. Okay,
well then it's not analogous.
Yeah, it is.
Because God has reasons. No, it's not analogous. It's not analogous because God has reasons why he allows evil to instantiate.
So he's a skeptical theist now, Jack.
It's not.
No,
It's
but it
not.
doesn't matter whether God has a reason, right?
Yes, it is. If
Then
you're trying to say in your analogy there's no reasoning behind
there,
it, then
Well, then that's
then
just to
yes, it's
say
not
that he ought
analogous.
to do it.
Like, what's wrong with y'all? Are y'all serious?
But then that's just to say that he ought to do it, right? So you're
yeah.
saying God has a special reason for not using the anesthesia. And that's because, like, if he uses the anesthesia, down the road, World War III is going to break out and lots of people die, right? That kind of thing, right?
That's right. That's right.
But then that means that he ought not administer the anesthesia. And the good thing to do would be to
Yeah.
not administer the anesthesia. So him not administering the anesthesia is actually a good thing. So what you're arguing for is every instance of evil that you see is actually a good thing because it's necessary for this greater good, such that if the necessary thing doesn't happen, the consequent doesn't happen. And the consequent is the greatest of all possible goods. Therefore, all of the evils are necessary and therefore good. So in your worldview, evil does not exist.
So no. So if you're
You
trying
don't
to
just say no.
oh
You
my
gotta
goodness,
actually
I
engage
didn't
with
just
it.
say no. I didn't just say no. You just
But
be
you are
quiet
just
and
going to say
allow me
no.
to
I've been
finish.
listening to you.
I
Just
know. I
kind of
didn't just say
gibbering.
no. I didn't just say no.
Go
I was in
ahead,
the middle of a
gibber.
sentence.
Let's hear it.
Oh, I didn't. You know, there's a comma. There's a comma, right? You know what a comma is? That's how sentence can be structured, right? Where you can say no, and then you
All right, let's
elaborate.
just get off the meta. Just go on.
Yeah. Thank you. Please. So, I was trying to say that no. So you can allow you can allow morally evil things to be instantiated, and all things considered, they can be have a utility to them, right? But they're still morally evil. So there's no all things considered moral.
And in virtue of it, what is it evil?
In virtue of morality, it's evil.
But why is it?
But look,
why is it evil?
we're saying that what's
It's
evil.
morally evil.
We're saying that what's evil, right, is something that is undesirable to God, right?
Yeah, in a moral sense. Yeah,
We're saying that what's evil is what's undesirable to God.
in a moral sense.
Yeah, and what it means to say that it's undesirable is that under conditions where God can act to prevent it from obtaining, he will. Right?
That's your definition.
All else
of,
equal.
That's your definition of undesirable. I've already said that. That's not what I mean by
Yeah,
undesirable.
and that's the definition that's in play. That's the definition. Yeah, well, that's the definition that's at play in the argument.
all right,
And so if
well,
you're saying that it's not undesirable in the terms of the argument, right, then you're not objecting to the argument. You're just saying that God is an indifferent being in the terms of the argument. And the argument doesn't target indifferent gods.
No, you should. You
Right?
should try
It
to,
targets morally perfect gods,
You should try to
which
run.
by definition are not indifferent gods.
You should try to use definitions that apply to the individuals you running the argument on.
Yeah, that's just a bunch of nonsense.
No,
Right.
that's you.
I'm just telling you. I'm telling you what the argument is. The argument is that when evil is understood this way, when good is understood this way, right? There's a logical incompatibility between a perfectly good being coexisting with evil if he's an omnipotent being, right? And you haven't done anything to show there's any problem with that argument. You're just saying you don't believe in a God like that. That's fine. If you don't believe in a God like that, you're not objecting to the argument.
So yeah, like I said, if you try to make your own definitions, you can make a God sound.
I know what you mean by make your own definitions.
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
What definition is he just fabricating in an ad hoc manner?
He's hung up on undesirable.
So
how is he?
He thinks that he's going to defeat the argument. No, like J-Rob, he thinks he's going to defeat the argument by just not submitting to the definition.
Just use definitions, and we can continue the argument.
The argument. No, if the argument is still successful, whether holds that definition or not.
No. If you say, hey, all right, let's say for instance, if somebody says, hey, like if somebody says God, love is evil, and then they say, okay, so your God is evil because your God is love. Well, no, my God is love, but then your God is
you
evil.
just say yes.
Yeah, but you're the one doing
no,
that.
my God is not evil.
You're the one who's equivocating, who's introducing new senses and requiring us to jump between these two senses.
You're using a definition. You're using a definition for evil that just doesn't apply.
Look, do you understand that what the argument is saying is this? Here's a way to understand the term evil, right? We give a definition for it. Here's a way to understand good. We give a definition for it. And then we say, okay, if good and evil are understood in that sense, right, an omnipotent, perfectly good being is not logically compatible with evil existing, right? Do you understand that's what the argument is saying?
So yeah, like I said, if you're saying that love is evil, then I have to agree to your.
Look, I didn't say love
definition.
was evil.
I didn't say that you said that. I didn't say that you said that. I'm saying that.
I asked you a question. So just answer the question that I asked you. Just answer the question that I asked you. Don't talk about the love is evil sign. Don't talk about the love is evil thing. Just answer the question that I asked.
If you make up your own definitions, then yeah.
I didn't say anything about making up any definitions.
Yeah, that's what
okay.
you're doing.
What I said was, do you understand that the argument? Do you understand that the argument works like this, right? It says, okay, here's a concept of evil. We're going to define it this way, and we're going to use the term consistently.
Who's going to define it this way? You are
the people. The people rendering the argument.
All right, I don't agree with your definitions.
I don't know what you mean by agree with definitions.
Yeah,
right?
So if somebody tries to run an argument,
it's saying that if evil is understood this way, right, there's going to be a logical compatibility with these other properties, right?
Yeah. So Zach, if evil is understood to be love, then in that way, God.
I didn't ask you that.
I know you didn't ask me that. I'm just.
Yeah, but I'm asking you to answer my question.
I'm just showing you how dumb it is to make your own argument.
You can save that. You can save that for later. You can save that for later. Right now, I want you to answer the question.
Yeah.
You understand that's how the argument works?
Yeah, of course. You can make an argument. You can make
so, given that that's the way the argument works, have you shown there's any problem with the argument?
Yeah, I actually have. Yeah.
So you've shown that, in fact, the claim that given those definitions, there is a logical incompatibility. You're saying you've shown that given those definitions, there isn't a logical incompatibility. That's what you're saying?
No, I'm saying
just
that
objecting to the definition.
Because the argument is saying, given these definitions, we can demonstrate a logical incompatibility between evil obtaining and a God with these properties existing, where good and evil are construed in the way set up in the argument. Right? Have you shown any problem with that demonstration?
So I'd have to recount your argument, but based off of what I've understood or I can recall, yeah, if you make up your definition, then your argument.
I don't know why you say make up.
I'm saying we make up our definitions.
I think he's trying to say that the argument holds.
Yeah. If you make up your own, if you make up your own definition,
I don't understand why he keeps saying make up.
Because
that's what you're doing.
It's a rhetorical device. He's just trying to poison the well or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you're just dishonest.
That's what you're doing. You're
Jack,
making up your own definition.
Have you defined good as that which ought to occur by God's lights?
Yeah.
Okay. J-Rob, do you have a problem with that definition of good as that which ought to occur by God's lights?
That which ought to occur by God's lights?
Yeah. In God's view, that which ought to occur is synonymous with the word good. That the way we can define good is, according to God, that which ought to occur.
Not necessarily you mean in a moral sense, or are you talking about
in the moral sense? Yes, obviously.
No, that's not how I would define good.
So you think God thinks that evil ought to occur?
That God thinks evil ought to occur? What do you mean? Does he think it ought to occur?
We're trying to define good in a normative way, in a way that guides actions, right? That's standard ethics.
I mean,
right?
good.
So good is defined as that which God feels ought to occur.
No,
should happen.
No, I say good is what reflects the nature of God.
Yeah, that's just a non-normative view. That's just a non-normative view of the good.
That's some identity thing.
Now, of course, there is a way in which the argument could still be run on a non-normative view if you still think that there's some opposition relation that holds, right? Because that's like the chair destroying machine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he could just deny the opposition relation. So if he denies the opposition relation, then he's not going to be targeted by the view that the view of God he has is not going to be targeted by the argument.
Yeah, because the reason why I don't agree with that definition because what is good, free will ought to occur, right? So obviously, with regards to free will, there entails a possibility of evil. So
free will doesn't require that evil occur.
Huh? No. But
the existence of free will doesn't entail the existence of evil.
I'm sorry.
Because God has free will.
I'm sorry, man. Because I'm talking to multiple people, and I've had multiple conversations about this. When I just generally say free will, I'm speaking in a sense of love, where love can be expressed.
He's gonna say love
to choose good and evil, etc.
Just making up definitions now.
Well, no, I know I'm not
That's
making
not
up
true.
definitions. When I say free will, I don't
Yeah,
You don't
I
mean
don't
exactly.
free
define
will.
when I don't define. No, I'm saying I don't define free will as having the choice between good and evil. I'm saying when I'm talking to most of the people on the platform, right? We already know how I have my arguments, right? And when I say free will, I'm usually talking out in the sense where love can be expressed.
Okay, love or not love?
Does God have free will?
Right? Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
oh my god. So we got to keep going down this road.
He's
All
gonna
right.
say
So wait,
like more now.
wait.
He's
God
gonna
has free
change his
will, right?
definition once again.
Oh my
No.
goodness.
Look. Let's let him do it though. Let's let him do it
Oh my
live.
goodness.
Look,
So
so
love,
wait. You said that
to
God exists
imperfect agents. Let's just repeat again. Love to imperfect agents
is
requires
required for free will.
no. It's not required for free will. Free will is required for love.
Yes.
So
Yes.
right.
So what do you mean by free will then?
So free will
Can't
is
be
just the
love if it is required for.
it's just the ability to make choices on your own volition.
So wait, that sounds kind of circular.
I said free. So free will is required for love, right?
Okay.
I didn't say the opposite way around. You said the opposite way around.
No. You said free will is making choices of your own volition.
Yeah.
Yeah, free
I'm
agency.
saying that sounds circular.
How is that?
What do you mean by your own volition?
So
Free
based
agency.
off, your agents, free agency.
So you mean like the principle of alternative possibilities, right? Like where you could choose A or B.
Right.
It's the will
Well,
is
there's no A
where
or B. There's
action is
infinite
housed.
possibilities.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. A or not A. Right? Is that better?
There you go. That's better. There you go.
Okay. So, and the thing that is choosing, like on what basis is it choosing? Is it indifferent? Is it
Based
random?
off of your reason.
Your own reasoning.
They're just going to say that it's a brute.
Desires.
It's a brute contingent fact between, whether so you have some motivation for A, you have some motivation for B, right? Which one obtains is a brute contingent fact.
Nothing explains it. It's just a brute contingent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the definition in and itself. I would say it's like 1 + 1 = 2. Like that in and itself explains what it is. I don't think you need
Well,
to
there isn't
expound
an
anymore on it.
explanation if it's a brute contingent fact. The point is, you're just saying there's an explanation for why one of the two options will obtain, right? Because antecedent conditions determine that either A or B will obtain, right?
Well,
But then which
so-
of the two obtains is just a brute contingent fact.
So,
You
and
need
that's
to
why
use
I needed
more
him to
relatable
specify
language.
as not A and B. It's A and not A. Because when you introduce multiple options, that in and itself is the free will.
Look.
When I only have two options, I don't have a free will. I just have the two options. That's when you go into the, if you want to go, yeah.
Look, I
That's
don't
our
have
free
an
will.
infinite
If I
number of
only have two
options for every decision point.
You have an infinite number of options for whatever you
No,
do.
I don't. I don't have
Yes, you do.
the option to turn into a supernova.
Well, that wouldn't establish
Okay, within the
that you
realm
didn't
of
have
reality,
infinite.
let me rephrase that. Within the realm of reality, you still have an infinite number of options. Like I can choose to drive my car, I can choose to drive it into a wall, I can choose to not get in my car, I can choose to flatten my tires, I can choose to be in the house. I have choices in every choice that I make.
Yeah.
Not drive your car.
Yeah, and what explains
You don't
the
have
choice?
infinite choices. It's eat a Snicker bar or not
Well,
eat a
he's
Snicker
just
bar.
saying-
There's
he's
I'm
just
saying
saying-
within the realm of my
He's
being,
saying
I have
if you,
choices.
he's saying if you
why
chose
are we
not to
doing this?
drive. He's saying that if you chose not to drive your car, there are infinite number of ways you could choose not
Wait, what does
to
this have
drive
to
your
do
car.
with what we
You
were?
could go to the candy store. You could get an ice
Well, that's
cream.
what I'm saying.
You could.
Yes, that's what I'm talking
That's
about.
what he's saying.
Yeah, but to say, oh, I can either not do this or do this, it's like, no, I have multiple options and things I can do, and
Yeah,
that
I don't
in
know what
itself
you think
is the
that
free
gets
will.
you. You think that gets you free will?
Could somebody, I just joined, and I apologize that I'm coming in medias res, but could somebody actually formally present that the problem of evil defeats Christianity, please?
Yeah, I've been sitting here waiting for that too.
It's just going to depend on whether you think God is a perfectly. If you think that a good being is a being that's opposed to evil, which is to say that it seeks to eliminate evils wherever it can, right? And so then you say God is perfectly good, right? Which means he has that nothing competes with his aim to eliminate evils where he can, right? And that he's omnipotent, which means that he can do whatever he wants. It's just going to follow like that. That evil can't be taken.
Well, this would be my argument, if you guys don't mind. So basically, Man is designed to know and to love God. Love by necessity has to be a free act of the will. In order to love God, you have to be able to freely love Him or freely turn away from Him. And love in this instance would be conforming your will to God's will. And evil is not a substance, but it's a deprivation of the good. And God, I wouldn't define Him the way that you said, where He's trying to eradicate evil at all possible things. Like that's like some type of efficiency argument. Rather, I would say that our highest purpose through like man as being the highest creation of God, our highest purpose is to love God. And so He has to give us the ability to love Him. And that's where we have free will, which is where your choices and actions lie within the soul. And the soul is made up of reason, will, and passion. The will is where the actions lie. And so evil exists in the sense as it's the deprivation of the good, and it's a function of the will where man chooses not to do the good in certain instances. But God chooses love higher than, I would say, the concept of eliminating evils at all possible terms. Rather, He wants people to freely love Him to fulfill their divine purpose. Does that make sense? Did you guys hear me?
Yeah. And
Okay.
basically said pretty much what I've been saying this whole time.
But the issue, what's at issue, is whether God thinks it's undesirable that people reject Him.
Turn away from it. Yeah.
But this is where you're going to go.
Well, to answer that question, God has a universal will for the salvation of all souls, and He gives each man sufficient grace in order for the attainment of that end.
Well, it's clearly not sufficient.
Right.
Well, why would you say that it's clearly not sufficient?
I would always obtain.
Say it again.
Because then His will.
If it
would
were
obtain.
sufficient, it would always obtain.
No, because
That's what
man
sufficient
has
means.
yes, it would always obtain in the sense if man cooperated with God's graces, then he would obtain that end, which is union with God in heaven for all of eternity.
So it's insufficient.
No,
No,
desire.
man. The thing that is given from God to man is sufficient, but bound by the concept of love, which has to be done through a free act of the will, man chooses to cooperate with the gift or cooperate with the graces or not. But the grace provided is sufficient for man bound by the concept of love.
And the grace is resistible, yeah?
Yes, you can choose to cooperate with it or not cooperate with it.
Yeah, so it's insufficient.
So you're
Well, I
saying
don't know.
that
You would have to define that more for me.
Sufficient means if X happens, then Y will obtain. If X is sufficient for Y.
Yes, if
you need
man
something
cooperates,
else,
hang on.
then it's
If God
insufficient.
cooperates with God's grace, then he will obtain heaven. So yes, it's sufficient in that capacity.
Is this audible, just out of curiosity?
Yeah,
So I wasn't sure if
yeah.
I'm being blocked. Okay. Yeah, he's just saying sufficient.
Okay,
Jack, you're breaking up.
Say that again.
He's saying it's. Oh, I think I. Can you hear me now?
Jack, your connection's not very good. Yes.
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, yeah. He's just saying it's sufficient given man's cooperation. If those two he's saying that if man cooperates, he will always be able to. It will always be the case that this obtains.
Yes.
Yeah. But what's at issue is it the case that God thinks it's undesirable for man to reject him?
Is it the case that God thinks it's undesirable?
How you
Well,
define
God-
undesirable? I see it coming.
Well, I'm just saying that God desires for the salvation of all souls.
So it's
Right, so he thinks it's
undesirable.
undesirable when men reject him, right?
Yes.
Okay, but see, I think the issue here is that you're using undesirable in some kind of very weak sense. That's not the sense presupposed by the argument. Because in the argument, to say that something is undesirable is to say that it would move an agent who had the power to act to prevent what was undesirable would do so under those conditions. Right.
First off, I didn't use the term undesirable.
Well, I asked you.
I know, but you're the one making this argument. I didn't make that argument.
No, I'm just saying that what we're saying is we're saying it's not possible for a God who thinks that those things are undesirable right? It's not possible for those things to obtain for a God who thinks those things are undesirable, because an omnipotent God would always act to eliminate what he thought was undesirable.
Otherwise, in what sense is it
So
undesirable?
hang on. Are you equating evil with being undesirable?
Yes, to God.
Okay. But do you understand that there is a higher purpose? So going back to defining concepts like good, goodness, truth, and beauty are three transcendent qualities of God. And goodness arises from a thing doing what it's supposed to do, fulfilling its teleological purpose. And so man is designed, our highest end or our teleology is to know and to love God. And so it's love that is is a function of the man's highest purpose. It seems like you want God to say, well, if I don't want somebody to spill a cup of coffee on themselves, because that would be evil, therefore, if someone spills coffee on themselves, evil exists, therefore God is insufficient, or something along those lines. But you have to understand that there are orders of magnitude, there's higher degrees of purpose, and love, knowing and loving God, is man's highest end, and love has to be a free act of the will.
I have a question.
Which means that the person has to freely choose to love God, and then also be capable of freely choosing to turn away from God. So if God's highest end is to have man love him, that's what we should be trying to understand from that perspective, not whether or not things like evil exist. Does that make sense, what I said?
Well, it's
So
kind
you're
of
saying God
irrelevant.
is indifferent to evil?
Yeah.
No, God respects mankind so much that he gives us the capacity to freely love him or to freely reject
So
him.
the greatest good is God. It's greater than the Holocaust or any of these other apparent evils, right? And that all of
I don't
these
understand what you
evils
mean.
are necessary for the greatest good, which is God loving man of his own free will.
Well, evil exists through man turning away from the good. Evil is not a substance, it's the deprivation of
Yeah,
the
but what
good.
explains why God allows it? Like, you can
Because it's
still have
called
the free
God's
will
permissive.
decision.
It's
I'm saying
called
you can still
God's
have the free will. Go
well,
ahead.
I'm answering
Permissive
it.
will.
It's
Yeah.
called God's permissive will, and it's
Which is at
articulated through
odds.
the story of Joseph, where God allows for evil to take place because he knows that he can bring about a greater good from it. If
Yeah.
greater evil was brought about from the evil itself, then God would not allow for the evil to take
So
place.
was that evil necessary for the greater good?
Well, it's within God's permissive will, so he deemed it to be necessary.
So if it's necessary for the greater good, then that just means that that ought to happen, that that thing is not evil, that it should happen.
No, because
Otherwise the greatest
also,
good wouldn't
remember,
obtain.
God is not doing these things. God has created man,
But he
and
has a reason to allow these things.
man has
Okay, but
the
he's
capacity
partly
to freely,
responsible. Like if
he's
I have a
free
child and they
to,
told me that they're going to go
We're
to
just
school and they're
saying
going to hurt somebody, and I still let them go to school, I am partly responsible for them going to the school and hurting somebody.
the issue is this, right? God has a choice, right? He
Presumably he
can
believes that,
see
right?
somebody. He can see somebody he can see some very bad thing as imminent, right? Like it's imminent that millions of people will die, right? As might occur if a very powerful bomb were about to be dropped, or he could see that if the final solution in during World War II were to be enacted, it would result in the deaths of millions of people, right? And so he can decide at that moment, I'm going to act to prevent this from obtaining, right? But it sounds like what you want to say is, if he were to do that, he would end up with a worse outcome. In which case, since he's trying to achieve the best possible world, right, he must not intervene. It's better that those things obtain than not obtained by God's lights.
if God decides through his permissive will to allow for mankind to do a certain evil, it is done in the instance knowing that a greater good can be achieved from that action. And also, I think it's important to note that temporal realities are not ultimate realities. So, like, let's say someone innocent gets killed, and let's say this hypothetical is a diamond or something like that. Each person will be judged based off of their knowledge of God's will and how they chose to use their free will.
But
And
I just
so,
want you to address what I was saying.
I was
So
addressing what you said.
no, but I just want to understand, are you agreeing with what I said or disagreeing?
I'm trying to fully understand what you're saying, but it sounds like.
So basically, in one sense, right, out of free will.
Wait.
Right?
You're not gonna help.
Yeah.
So let's just try to hone in on let's just try to hone in on what it is you're not understanding about what I said.
Are you talking to me? I'm Frank,
Yeah,
by the way.
yeah, I'm talking to you.
Okay.
Frank, so would you not agree that in one sense, God allowing free will is good, right? Even if those free will actions are evil, but in another sense, all evil actions are morally good, or morally wrong. So there's two different senses in which free will being instantiated is good and then also morally wrong.
About to go grocery shopping. I'm gonna drop down.
We're only concerned with one sense.
Yeah, so it's always morally wrong.
And then it couldn't be that God is perfectly good and all powerful, and that those things obtain.
No, that's your definition. So
Frank is trying to introduce this competing wills theology, right? Where God has this permissive will, right? Is that right?
God does have a permissive will, yes. That's part of my. I didn't use the terminology used specifically, but
he
yes,
has a
God
reason,
has permissive will.
right? He has a reason every time he uses his permissive will to allow some evil to occur. And you're saying that the justification of that is because it's necessary for the accrual of some greater good. Right? If it wasn't necessary, then it wouldn't make sense for God to allow it, right?
Well, I don't know if I would use the term necessary. It's just a function of his permissive will. Because keep this in mind, there's primary and secondary causality. So miracles would be an instance where God like directly intervenes and like messes with the chain of dominoes falling to achieve a specific end that he has. But most of the time, things operate through secondary causality, which is where free agency and free choice exists. And then he uses natural means rather than supernatural means to achieve the end that he wants.
Yeah, and God has a choice at every moment which path to go down, right? Which to use to affect his great plan, right?
Well, it gets a little confusing because God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present, and he knows the beginning from the end. So in terms of
confusing.
Well, I'm saying in terms of like choice is strange from the perspective of God because I don't
think God
know.
has a choice?
Well, he does have his own free agency, yes, because he was not. He's the uncaused cause and unmoved mover. So he freely chose to create the world from his own free will. Yeah.
And so this is going back to what J-Rob was talking about earlier, what we were talking to him about. At the moment of, just moment prior to creation, was that existence good?
Well, God would be the only thing in existence, and God is goodness himself. Yes.
Okay. So God choosing to create the world, did that make the set of all things worse or better or the same?
Well, he created the world and it was good.
Okay. The same good?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there's a greater or less than good, honestly, at this point.
Wait, you don't know if there's one action is better or worse than another action?
Well, I don't know. I'm saying that God is perfect goodness, and then he created the world from free choice so that the world could participate in his goodness. So it's a gift to the creation, not to the creator. So it's difficult to
we're
answer.
Looking at the set of all things. Did God choose to increase, decrease, or stay the same the amount of good in the world?
I don't know what you mean by a set of all things.
What's unclear about the set of all things? Creation plus God.
Creation plus God, what?
Is the set of all things.
Are you saying everything in existence is the combination of God plus creation?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by a set of all things?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you rephrase the question? Or restate it, excuse me.
Okay, so prior to God creating, you said everything, the set of all things is God plus nothing, right? That's the set of all things. God chose to create, so now it's God plus creation, right?
Okay.
God sans creation is ultimate good, right?
Say that again, please.
God without creation is good, right? Ultimate good. There's nothing better than God, right? There's no more good than God, right?
Yes.
Okay. God is a rational agent, and he's going to act in accordance with his desires and his will and all of this, and his nature and all of these things. So he's motivated for whatever reason. He's not going to be motivated to create a worse universe, right? That would be a bad thing, to create something that's crappy, right? So at best, him creating the rest of the world is going to be equivalent to the amount of good of just him without creation. It certainly can't be better. Nothing's better than God, right?
Oh, you're saying that because God is like infinite goodness, you can't add to infinity? Is that what you're saying?
Right. So when he creates, it's like a lateral move, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't enhance his goodness because he's like already good. Is that what you're saying?
So what Jack was saying was that the amount of evil in the world, God is actually indifferent to.
Okay, so...
Because otherwise that would motivate him to not create a world with evil in it. Is that right, Jack?
Yes,
Say he
that's
said
right.
yes.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, the way I would
So,
answer it, and then we can move we can address the argument after this.
well, so just real quick, do you think that entails that God is indifferent to the evil? Because if he wasn't indifferent, that would motivate him to not create that evil or not create that world?
No, I don't
That's
think
what it
that
means to be indifferent.
you're defining indifference as not creating evil or
Oh,
creating
no,
evil. Is
no.
that what you're saying?
Being indifferent meaning like whatever it is doesn't move you to do something.
Okay, so restate the question, please.
That God is indifferent to the evil in the world, and that's what explains his ability to create the world. Because the creation of the world can't result in a net reduction of good in the set of all possible things, because that would be irrational for an all-good God to do.
Well, God is creating things so that things will have the ability to participate in God's goodness. So
And that's a good thing.
it's not a good thing for God necessarily. It doesn't enhance his goodness. Instead,
No.
he gives creation the opportunity to participate in his goodness and experience his goodness.
Yeah,
And
so we're
through
saying
that,
that
he
that's
gives
like a
us,
lateral move, right? In the amount of goodness in the universe, in the set
from
of all
God's
possible things.
perspective, yes. But from the created being's perspective, now they have the opportunity to participate in God's good.
Mhm.
So it would be an enhancement for the created being, not an
I'm sorry.
enhancement for
I
God.
think.
Can you hear me?
Well, I'm talking about an enhancement in the set of all things. I think you broke up in the first part of what you were saying.
Oh, sorry. Which part do you remember me saying so I can repeat it?
Just repeat it.
I'm trying to remember. Oh, I was saying that
You're saying it's an
God
enhancement
is
not for
not.
God, but it's like a
Yes.
bonus for creation.
Yeah,
But I'm saying when you
creation.
look at the
Okay.
set of all things, we're not saying that there's like greater good in the world now. And by the world, I mean the set of all things, right? I don't think you're saying that because God by himself is the ultimate good, right? That's like, you can't get any better than God, right?
Yes.
And God is choosing to do this thing, but he's all
Yes.
good. So he's not going to choose to do something bad, right?
Hmm.
Right? He's going to choose to do something good,
Hmm.
but it's not going to make things better, but it's certainly not going to make things worse, right? So I'm saying it's a lateral move. It's like within his nature to create things that
Well,
don't
again,
upset,
this is
that don't reduce the overall good in the set of all things, right?
what
And
this
so
is
that
from
means that when
God's
we look at the set of
perspective.
all, when we look at creation, what God has created, if we find anything in there that is like morally objectionable, that those must not move God, right? Those morally objectionable things are only morally objectionable to us because of whatever our limited insight or anything like that, right? They're not morally objectionable to God because otherwise they would be action guiding for God. He would see those and he would say, oh, those things ought not happen, right? So I'm going to change my creation such that it does map in such a way where there's an equal amount of good, right? To just me before creation. So that's what Jack means by God is indifferent to the evil, that you can maintain God being all good, all powerful, omniscient, if God is indifferent to the evil. And that we just think it's evil, but it's not evil to God. Because if it were evil to God, he would be motivated to do something else.
Well, we know it's evil because God has told us certain things are evil, and God is authority itself and the moral order. So he's relayed that information to us through divine revelation. But I'm trying to understand it from your perspective. So you're saying he's indifferent to evil because evil doesn't harm God and he allows for it to take place?
No, I don't say anything about harm. I'm saying the evil that
I'm
we
trying to gain
point to
clarity.
is only evil to us because of our limited knowledge, our limited perspective, our limited rationality, right? God is perfectly rational. God is perfectly good. God knows all true propositions, right?
Hmm.
And whatever God wills will obtain, and he's not going to will something that's crap, right?
Hmm.
So it's only evil. It's only apparently evil to us. We're just wrong. When we see the evil in the world, we're just wrong.
No,
It's
that's
not
not.
evil. It's part of
No,
God's perfect plan.
no, because here we go. So God wills the good for all people. People freely choose whether or not to accept or to conform their will to God's will for their life. God
But
gives you assistance in the form of grace to be able to achieve the good in this capacity. But the
so
point
can
is, hang on, the point is our highest calling is to love God. And love through necessity has to be a free act of the will. That's how love is defined.
can
So,
God
for
fail?
example, if God created people so that they had to love him, they wouldn't be loving him because love has to require the possibility to turn your will against God. So the presence of evil is not from God, but it's man choosing not to do the good. Evil is not a substance, it's the deprivation of the good.
So,
And
so you
God
agree there's no
allows.
love in heaven?
What do you mean?
Well, you're saying that love requires you to be able to turn away from God, right? And presumably you don't think you can fall out of heaven.
Well, did history take place? I mean, the way that heaven works in the
Did
Christian
history
understanding.
take place?
Well, I'm
I believe
saying
so.
that the point is we have this temporal realm. Part of it is like a filtering process for people to choose to love God or not. And so you could define heaven as the people who have already freely chosen to love God, and they're participating in that already. So the choice already took place. So it's not that love does not
So
require
they
a
don't have
choice.
to always have the choice, right? So when they're in heaven, they no longer have that choice, but they're still loving.
Well, part of what heaven is you have now a fixed will through what you've already done in the temporal
So you have
realm.
no free will. You have a fixed will.
Well, you had the free will when you were on Earth.
But in heaven, you don't have free will.
Well, you have. Well, how would I define it? So, for example, there's 4 wounds in the fall. The visible God became invisible. Instead of supernatural wisdom, we have ignorance, and instead of perfect integrity of the appetites, we have concupiscence, and then we have bodily mortality, where we used to have bodily immortality. So I guess we would have perfect integrity of the appetites is how I would define it. Which the soul, reason, will, passion, you would have a just or a harmonious soul at that point.
Okay, so
Would that make
the
sense?
option to turn away from God does not exist, right?
Well, you already had that option.
Yeah, so the option to
You're
turn
in
away
the
from God
end.
does not exist in heaven, right?
I would imagine not, no.
Okay. So how is love possible?
Because you already existed with free will.
Wait. You said that love was only true love if you had the possibility of turning away.
Yes.
And I don't have the possibility of turning away, so it's not true love.
Because it's the end. You're confusing means and ends. You already existed. The temporal world, this reality, is where you chose to love God.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's a free act of the will.
Yeah, but in heaven it
You
isn't.
understand? But you chose to enter into that.
Yeah, but you're saying it's a necessary condition of love that you be able to turn away from it.
Yes, in the temporal world.
I don't know what that has to do with anything.
Great. That's a great point, Jaglos. Great point.
I'm saying that it's an end. First off, we don't even know if heaven
You're
has
saying we don't
time
have
or
free
anything
will in
like that.
heaven, and we don't have the ability to choose otherwise.
First off, the
in
no
heaven.
free will in heaven for just for clarity is speculation on my part.
That's fine.
Okay. Because I'm participating in this conversation. Like, I'm not trying to be disingenuous with you guys, but I don't want people to be definitive on
in
this is
heaven,
what I
can you
actually think.
choose one thing versus another?
I would say you have perfect integrity of the appetites, which means whatever you
That means
choose.
your appetites never change, right?
No, that's not what that means. It means that you have justice or perfect harmony of the appetites. So, for example,
What are the appetites?
Well, so from like Plato, for example, believed in the tripartite soul. So you have reason, will, and passion. And he said that the end for man is to achieve justice or harmony of the soul, which is reason dominating the will and the passion.
Yeah, the
Right?
charioteer. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So man is reason, the horse is passion, and then the bridle is will. Right? And so the proper order is the man directing and guiding the horse towards the proper end. The horse gives you the energy to go somewhere. Reason guides you, and the bridle is like your constraints to allow you to actually achieve that end. So in that capacity,
heaven, we have that, right? So you're saying we can love, and God creates a world where people's desire, reason, and passion are all in alignment and harmony.
it's
right?
because it's a healing
that's
of the wound of the fall.
Yeah. Okay. So is a healing of the wound of the fall necessary for this end state?
Well, God freely chose to create the world. He's not bound by anything. So like the particular plan that he chose for, like he particularly created Adam and Eve. There was a particular fall at a particular point in time. He decided to, or Christ entered into history and allowed for like this, like he chose the particular Hebrews and Israelites and stuff, but he's not bound by those things. That was part of his like free choice. So in terms of like,
so it's just a brute contingent.
I don't know what that means.
World is, it just means there's no explanation for it. It's just the explanation is just that he did it.
Well, also
there's no reason he did.
Also keep in mind,
there's no reason he picked
Christianity,
one Hebrew over another Hebrew. There's no reason he picked Adam to be 6 feet tall versus 6'1". There's no reason any of these other things. It just came out of his will.
Well, I'm not saying that there's not a reason, but also within the Christian perspective, or from like this theistic perspective, God is inherent. Well, let's just pure reason. God is inherently greater than me or you, and his rationality is inherently superior to mine or yours. So from that, it necessarily follows that we cannot fully comprehend everything that God has chosen to do. And from a particular theistic perspective, we would say that those are part of the mysteries of the faith, or things that we do not fully understand. Or things that we can't also fully understand, at least at this particular point in time.
Yeah, so how do you trust any of your moral judgments?
Hi, I have a question for everybody up here. How do you guys know that God is real? Honestly, how do you know?
I would say that I would point to Aquinas's 5 proofs for the existence of God, that nothing comes from nothing. There is something, therefore there was never nothing, and the something could not have brought itself into existence because it would have to exist before it existed.
Is it proof that he ever existed? I have a question. Is it proof that he ever existed? Is it actual like scientific
Jesus
proof?
or God?
I think she's talking specifically about Jesus, and you could say yes, there's proof that Jesus specifically existed
like
because
the Bible in its entirety. Is there any proof that any of those things ever happened?
there are proof that some of those things have happened explicitly.
Is there any proof?
I mean, but there's stuff in Tom Clancy novels that are proven to have happened, doesn't?
Well, I know, but we're trying to answer your question.
So where's your proof?
Well, for example, the life of Jesus was recorded outside of just the New Testament. And so there's other historians there was a Jewish, I think it was Josephus, yes. And then there was also, I think, Titus, maybe. Don't quote me on this.
Yeah,
this isn't my realm
the
of
Testimonium
expertise.
Flavianum, which is Josephus's account of the life of Jesus, has been shown to be an interpolation.
Shown to be a what?
Interpolation.
I don't know what that
we
word
don't know
means.
what means. We don't know what the original was, if there was an original, because it's been tampered with.
Okay. Well, either way, I would say that if you went digging for it, I'm sure that there's like historical records for it, if that's something that you're driven to look for.
Historical records for what?
The existence of a person named Jesus at the time. Now, whether or not he's the Son of God would be a question of faith.
I mean, Jesus is a pretty common name. Presumably, you mean more than that.
You
Jesus,
know what
who
I'm
was the
talking about,
founder
so I
of
don't know why you're being
Christianity, right?
facetious.
No, I'm
Are you
saying no. I
entering into this
don't
with
know
good
what she
faith, or are we
knows.
just going
No,
to
I'm
be
just saying
like,
I don't know what she knows. If you're just saying,
well, first off, if we're going to go off that, she never said Jesus.
Right.
She just talked about the Bible. So, I mean, like, if we're going to be this nitpicky at this point, then I feel like it's not going to be in good faith. Because I'm trying to participate in an honest discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I wasn't trying to be pedantic.
All right. Well, it did feel that way, and I apologize if I misinterpreted that.
No worries. I've been known to be a pedant at times, so I fully accept that.
Again, I don't know what that
and I'm
word
working
means.
on it. It means what you think it means.
Okay.
So with God, right, we're talking about his indifference to evil, right? And indifference meaning doesn't motivate you to act, right? So if God is good, if God is all good, then the things that he's going to create are not going to reduce the overall good in the world, because that would be bad, right? If I choose to create a murdering monster, hello.
Relationship with you.
Do I force people? No.
Yeah, is it a good thing not to force people to be in a relationship with you?
I think it's terrible to force someone against their will.
Well, you're saying what you're saying is that God did a good thing by allowing you to have your own subjective will to choose not to be in a relationship with him. God is saying,
wait,
hold on, let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. God gave you a subjective free will, and you can reject God. You can act outside of God's will and choose not to be in a personal relationship with him. And then those who have accepted, given up their will to God's will be the ones who will be with God at the end of all this and be transformed to be with God at the end of all this. And the ones who rejected God will have their choice. They chose to reject God, so they will be separated from God.
Yeah, but that's different from God designing you without free will.
It's your choice. Why are you crying? Why do atheists always cry about the choice they were given? They say choice is a good thing. You say choice is a good thing, but then you turn around and cry and complain about God giving you a free choice.
Wait, beyond what's our argument? What do you think we're arguing?
No, he made a great point. He said, is it better or worse to force somebody to love you or be in a relationship or to give you free will? He said that God gave, we agreed that free choice was better than force. And then he said that those who choose
to go against your will, right?
it's I
And
guess
God
you're
creating you without
hijacking
free
it.
will isn't actually going against your will.
Well, I was summarizing the argument. Now you're trying to
Yeah,
come in and like critique it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
I'm
is
just
what I'm
trying
doing.
to,
His
because you
point's
asked me what he
confused.
was talking
No,
about.
Are you
it's the
saying
truth.
God
It's like
can't
atheists.
make people who freely choose the good?
You said,
Again, I'm
ask that
sorry.
question again.
You don't think that God can make people who always freely choose the good?
Oh,
They
of
understand
course.
that there's bad.
Listen,
They understand that, but they just, no matter how hard they try, they fail to do evil. God couldn't make
listen.
that world?
Yes, of course. And maybe,
Then,
hold up, let me ask you a question. How do you know that world doesn't exist? God tells us there's other heavens. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. How do you know those other worlds don't exist? And God is just saying,
because we're
listen,
talking about this world. We're talking about this world. Stay focused on this world.
but if you're doing an internal critique of Christianity, you got to accept that there are other worlds and other heavens.
I can't debate this buffoon. I don't know what you're talking about.
You got to accept there are other worlds and
Nothing
other
he's
heavens.
saying is buffoonery.
Look, we're talking about this
so I
world.
think that's disingenuous to
Okay, so
try
what
to
is the
critique him
The
like that.
example of this
He's
world
making
is
a
the one
valid
that
point in the
proves that
sense of,
Christianity is false.
hang on, you're talking about abstract principles, and you're
Exactly.
talking about abstract metaphysical concepts, and he just offered, and I'm not even saying I agree with his perspective, but he was saying, how do you know that there isn't an alternative world in which this exists? Because
It's
if we're
irrelevant.
defined,
It's
no, it's not.
irrelevant.
If we
It's
define
totally
God as
irrelevant.
infinite, you ask the question, could God not create that? And he's saying, how do you know that he didn't in a
We
world
said,
that you can't perceive? So
we said
I'm just
God
saying
is
it's
infinitely
not a
good.
buffoon statement, and it's disingenuous to present his argument that way.
Look,
And so we should
let's
address
hold
it
on. Let's get
its face
clear. What
value.
Completely
explains
irrelevant.
why? Let's get clear. What
Okay.
explains why an agent does evil?
Because of
What
the human
explains why an
nature.
Are you
agent
going
does
into
evil?
another thing?
Let's
free
just get
will.
clear.
No,
What?
it's exactly his point.
No, free will explains the capacity to make decisions. It doesn't explain why they choose evil.
Yeah, of course it does, because the Bible tells you have
Wait, look.
it's
Can
the
you have free
knowledge. Let
will?
me ask you a
Wait, can you?
question.
No,
Let me
look.
ask you a
No.
question.
Wait. No. Because look.
The
To be
Bible,
clear,
listen.
I don't. Hold
Okay,
on.
I gotta
Calm
run,
down for a
guys.
moment. Look.
Good luck,
Can you
monkey
have
boy.
free will?
See you later.
Yeah, I'm gonna need it. Look. Yeah, peace, Josh. But look. Is
So,
it
yeah.
possible that you have free will and never choose evil?
You want to
Is
hear
it
the answer?
possible? Yes. Yes.
It
it's
is
possible.
logically okay. So then, having free will can't explain why you do evil. If it's compatible with having free will, that you never do evil. It's not
Hang
an
on, keep this in
explanation for the
mind.
fact that you have
Dude,
that you're doing
listen,
evil.
hang on. Keep this in mind. I'm a Christian, so I'm going to argue from a Christian perspective. Christians believe that concupiscence or the tendency to want to do evil or disorderly appetites is a wound from the fall. So it's not the way we were
I hear you.
originally designed.
Can I?
It's a simple explanation. Adam and Eve in the garden, they had free will. They could choose to eat off of any tree in the garden
Wait,
that they wanted to.
when
Let
someone
me
does
answer the
evil,
question. Adam and Eve had free
what
will.
question am I asking?
Adam and Eve have free will in the garden. They could choose to do anything within God's will.
What question
God
am I
gave them a
asking?
choice. Let me answer your question and stop interrupting. Be quiet.
What question are you answering?
Would you please be quiet?
What
And then
question
when
are
I
you
finish,
answering?
I'm answering a question about evil.
Which question?
I'm answering a question about evil. Just
Can you
let me
repeat the
answer.
question? I don't know what
You
you're
asked,
answering.
why is there evil in the world without free will? Let me answer the
No, I
question. Be
didn't.
quiet. Yes,
That's
you
not
did.
what I asked.
That's exactly
No.
what he answered.
Look, maybe you heard that, but I'm informing you that's
Listen,
not the question.
I'm telling you
So
how.
whether or not
I'm
you
telling
think
you
that's what
why
I
evil
asked,
exists
that's
through
not what
free
I'm.
will.
That's not
I'm
what I'm
telling you
asking
why
for
evil
an answer
exists
for.
through free will.
No. Oh my God.
Evil.
Look,
That's why we have the knowledge of
Look,
good and evil.
okay,
The knowledge
just
of
to
good.
clarify, that's not the question I'm asking.
Well, let me
That's
answer
not
the
the question I'm
point. Let
asking.
me answer. Let me make a statement, and then you can respond.
No, I asked you a question.
Because you
So we have
sound.
to get clear. We have to get clear on the
Listen,
question, and
let
then we
me
have to
answer
progress
the
the dialogue by
question.
you actually
All
presenting
you're
an
going to
answer.
do is interrupt because you can't answer. You can't
No.
accept
Because
the
I
answer.
asked you a question.
Why
You
don't you
didn't.
just
You
let
didn't even
the
track
man
what the question
answer?
was.
Yeah, he won't let me
Hang
answer
on,
because
guys.
that's what he
Because I
always
asked a
do.
You guys
question.
have derailed
He had not
things as
tracked what the
well.
question was.
He makes
So now
dumb
I'm going to
points.
repeat the question.
Hold up.
I didn't
He
even
makes
make a
dumb
point. I
points.
asked a question, and then you didn't track the
He makes
question.
dumb
Now
points.
you want to
And
make
he
a
doesn't want to
statement
listen.
while you haven't tracked my question.
You have to answer the question.
Yeah, can I answer the question, please?
You were confused on what the question was,
Is it a
though.
yes or
You
no?
did ask
Is it a
about.
yes or no
Well,
question?
ask the question again, and I bet it's exactly what I was answering.
Look, what I asked was, when an agent freely chooses to do evil, what explains that choice?
And that's exactly what I was explaining. If you would be quiet, what explains that choice is the knowledge of good and evil. When God gives you, when Adam and Eve was in the garden and they was under God's will, they had choices. They had free will to choose within God's will, and they were doing good. But God gave them the choice to act outside His will and outside of His commandments. And once you act outside of
Trey, don't get mad that I dropped him, but he's like a caveman in terms of IQ. There's no way
Dude,
I
he
can
was
reason with
not
him.
a caveman. He was making
No,
valid
no, no, no.
points.
He's
No,
genuinely
listen,
like stupid.
I am not a
but
stupid person. You are not a stupid person. He was
that
making
person is
valid
a stupid
points.
person. You're also
No,
kind of, but
no, I
that's
think you
fine.
think you're smarter than you actually are.
Well,
If
I
you
don't know
want
where
to
you
go down
got
that
that
whole
from. You don't
thing.
even know anything about my background. Saying someone else
Well,
is
you don't
stupid
know
has
anything
nothing to do
about
with thinking
me.
I'm more smart. Well, yeah, I've been in this live and I've heard everything you've said, so I
And I've
have a
heard what you've
reasonable
said as
suspicion.
well.
What have I said?
Have you not
One
been
thing I
talking
said.
this entire time, Monkey Boy?
I've asked a single question. What statements have I made that were dumb?
And
In
for the
fact,
record,
name
anyone
one statement
listening,
I've
his
made.
name is actually Monkey Boy. I wasn't calling him
Name
brother.
one. Just repeat back one statement I've made.
You were
Only.
asking, for example, you said that free
Wait,
will
you
is a
take
function.
an inquiry
I'm
and a statement
answering,
to be the
dude.
same? Wait, I just want to clarify. I asked you what statement I made, but now you're giving me an
No,
inquiry
you
I
didn't.
produced.
You literally said, "What question
Yes, I
did I
asked
ask?"
you. No, I didn't. I
I
asked
think,
what
well, then I
statement have I
misheard
made
you.
that was dumb? Yes, you misheard. What I asked was, what
All right, here's
statement
a
did I make that
statement.
was
You
dumb?
said that that guy
Bro,
had a
hey
caveman
Monkey,
IQ.
can I say something?
That's
Yeah,
a
Real
statement
and
that
quick,
you
real
made.
quick, real quick.
okay, and
Okay,
I'm
but look,
asking you, what dumb statement have I made?
It's asking, by the way.
I asked you, what dumb
Ask.
statement have I made? What dumb statement have I made?
Do you want to get back to the argument or what?
okay, can I
Dude,
say? I just, my bad.